Morrissey was interested in using me to, to play for him, And I remember saying something quite derogatory, like, oh, I'll never play, for him or whatever, and I didn't think I ever would. I certainly didn't think I'd ever kind of get any kind of invite to.
Yeah.
But towards the tail end of the summer, when I'd been in a while, out of the blue, I just get invited to go and have an informal audition for Morrissey. What the word that I got was that Morrissey had been invited to play the first Coachella Festival, and he needed a drummer, and I was given the date of the festival, and would I be interested?
Drum for the Song podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Drum for the Song podcast. I am your host, Dane Campbell. Today's guest is the fantastic Spike T. Smith. At the moment, he's playing in a death metal band called Memoriam, but historically, he's had a crazy career with a wide range of artists, such as The Damned, Morrissey, Killing Joke, Sacrilege, and New York Dolls, and many others. So quite a varied career, Spike. How are you doing today?
I'm really great, Dane. Thank you for inviting me on your program. I've been following it. I really like it.
I really appreciate that you've actually, taken some time to listen. And I guess that's how we started speaking, which was nice. I found out that you listened to the show, and then we ended up sharing a stage together, which was crazy at Bloodstock Festival. And it was really nice to meet you and watch you play. It was very impressive. So, as soon as I saw that, I was like, right, I got to get him on the show.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. I mean, yeah, it was great. You're right. It was great for both of us, wasn't it? It was amazing to finally get back out and play. It was amazing to play such a great festival, share the stage together. I mean, I thoroughly, enjoyed your set. I was watching from the side, and I watched some from the back to get the the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then I watched some from the side, and you were killing it.
Thank you very much. It was a fun show. It was really fun, and that was the third time we've played that festival, and it's always been great. So thanks to the guys at Bloodstock for having us again, and for the audience for being awesome as they always are. So it's great.
Hey, I thought of something funny that I didn't mention on the night.
Okay.
But when I was watching your interview with Mickey D, it was 10 years to the because in 2011 that he said they played their most awful show at that festival.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
I forgot about it on the night, but I thought it might have been a funny thing to tell your dad.
Yeah, he remembers it. I asked him about it, and I don't.
He probably done his best to forget about it, like we all do when we have those awful shows. The trouble is, you never can.
It sounds. I can't say I've ever had a show as disastrous as that sounded, but I haven't done as many shows as my old man, so I'm sure you've got to have the odd dodgy show every now and again.
Of course you do, and I suppose it's the pressure when you're doing it when you're in that level of band with that legacy, playing to that many people, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it was a headline slot, which I guess is even more pressure again. So I don't know, that's pretty scary because I watched I watched the headline set Judas Priest the following day, and I was just imagining being up there at that time was like, whoa, yeah, that's I've done headline slots on smaller stages and things like that, obviously, but that was a big stage, a lot of big audience, so there's a lot of pressure, but let's talk more about your. I say drum journey, but I know you discovered the drums when you were quite a young lad. So you want to describe how you kind of originally got playing the drums, and about your influences at the time and things like that, and maybe your family background and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the way it began. I mean, my father was a musician, very much like you. But my dad's a guitarist. Cool. He wasn't of like your dad's level. He was playing the local pubs and clubs. A very active, local musician in the area I grew up in, which is Holyhead in North Wales. So, you know, I was always around music. You know, we had a healthy record collection, you know, as you know, musicians tend to have. And hold on, something's come up on my screen. Yeah, you know, we had a healthy record collection, and he'd be out playing every weekend. So consequently, I would go with him to set up his gear or go and pick it up from the local pubs and clubs when I was very young. And you know, once I was able to operate a record player, I'd be going through the records and finding, you know, like anything that interested me. You know, it was you know, it's pretty much a rock and roll collection. I mean, you know, that's what he grew up on, and that's what inspired him. And so, you know, I'd see like, you know, like a Little Richard album and put that on, or you know, or obviously an Elvis, or Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly. It was all, you know, what the artist you'd expect, a great artist, and stuff like, you know, he had some Beatles and Rolling Stones and that. But mainly for me, it was the older rock and roll.
Okay.
And so, you know, I'd be listening to that, and then I'd be going with him to his gigs, and, you know, and helping him, you know, set up his equipment or take it down and whatnot. And I always used to love that for somebody so young. I'd been in all the pubs in Holyhead, you know, before I was about 8.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's mad.
Of course, you know, like this was what, you know, way before pubs were family sort of restaurant stroke pubs. You know, they were strictly like, you know, over 18s, you know.
Yeah.
So when I was young then, I really thought I was going to be a guitarist. I was obsessed with the guitar. And the rock and roll thing only, you know, encouraged that, you know, being that it's very guitar led.
Exactly, yeah.
But I also like the instrumental groups, and, you know, like records that were coming out at the time, you know, like, you know, the Shadows, 20 Golden Greats, Burt Weedon had an album out, and, you know, and I started checking out, you know, bands like the Ventures, you know, the American surf bands, and I just really loved the twangy guitar, Dwayne Eddy, you know, all of that. So I was convinced I was going to be a guitarist. It was just a case of when I was, you know, big enough to actually be able to, you know, to hold one and start, you know, learning to play it and play the chords and that. Well, I got a guitar for Christmas, like a, you know, a tradition, you know, typical, you know, like cheap classical style guitar that are really, you know, the necks are really wide.
Yeah.
Although my dad would allow me to sort of, to use his guitar as well. But, you know, like I felt as if I had my own guitar, and that's what I was trying to learn. Anyway, it didn't work out. It was, you know, I couldn't play it. I lost interest. I lost heart that I wasn't picking it up immediately and all of that usual stuff, you know. But of course, I was still very, very much, you know, obsessed with music, really. That's always been my thing. You know, I've never been big on sports and whatnot. But so fast forward like a few years to when I'm in secondary school, and, you know, I've developed a new passion in music, which is punk. I hadn't caught it right at the first wave. I was a little bit young for that. So, you know, this was about sort of like 1979, just when I started secondary school.
Right.
And, you know, going to a local, you know, like under 18 youth club style disco and whatnot. And I'd started hearing punk records there. I'd already started hearing a bit of new wave stuff on the radio, you know, your likes of Blondie and Elvis Costello and Boomtown Rats and that. And I was liking it. I was starting to think, I'm finding, you know, a bit of my own music here. But then, of course, when I went to these discos, you know, in them days, the discos used to have like rotating sections. It was primarily the popular pop disco music of the day, but they'd have a, you know, like a section that would be dedicated to punk, you know, and all the punks would be up and pogoing, the older punks, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And they'd have a little heavy metal section and a northern soul section, and a little bit later on a ska mod section. So it was all about kind of, you know, seeing these people that, you know, had their musical styles and you know, would swap over on the dance floor. You know, you'd have a bunch of punks pogoing or metalers headbanging or, you know, and whatnot, you know, the ska boys and girls doing their thing and that. And so that's how I got exposed to punk, because then suddenly I was hearing, like the Sex Pistols, Sham 69, Slaughter and the Dogs, Generation X, the heavier bands, the proper punk bands, along with, whoever was ordered of the day. So that's how I got introduced to punk music. And I started going out and buying the records then. I was able to go out and sort of look in the charts and see, the Skids' latest single is here, and I'd buy it. And so the way that it happened with the drumming thing, because that's kind of like my musical sort of, upbringing, was the guitar thing was like, that wasn't going to happen. And I wasn't looking for another instrument. I was just enjoying kind of, this new music that I'd found. And that was, just basically was feeding my appetite for it, because there was something coming out every week, a new record or, and whatnot, bands releasing albums. And one of the bands that I really loved, but I'd only recently discovered, was The Damned.
Ah.
So I had, I think, maybe a single, and maybe I just got what was their latest album. That was an album called Machine Gun Etiquette. And this was all kind of, like late 1979. And one night, I remember I had the record, and, the thing was, is that, on the records I had, they all had pictures of the band, but they didn't say who did what,
Right, okay.
So you didn't know. You just seen, oh, that's what the band looks like. And, I'd look and think, oh, God, one of them looks like Dracula. What does he play? Or what does he do? Or there's, ginger haired guy holding an axe. I wonder what instrument he plays and whatnot. Anyway, so that was The Damned. And I came home one night, I remember this really well. I from being out with my mates or whatever. And I'd either been in the house or just not that long come in, but my dad was in the living room watching a program I'd never heard or seen called The Old Grey Whistle Test.
Ah, right.
It's kind of like it's kind of got like a little bit of a legendary status now, or where it sits as a music program. And I suppose so it should, because you see so much footage from the bands of the day, and it's of them performing on that program, Anyway, I came in and, or I sat down in the living room, and just literally as I sat down, Anne Nightingale was introducing The Damned. So straight away I was like, whoa, wow,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, everybody older says this, but, back in the day, you couldn't go on the internet to search things out and look. You just had what you had. So for me, it was probably the first time I'd seen somebody that I liked that was on TV.
Yeah. Actually playing.
And so, the band launched into sort of promoting their latest song, which was Smash It Up. And of course, the first thing I'm looking like is like, I'm watching, I'm like, oh, the Dracula guy's the singer. And, the guy with the fluffy jumpers, Captain Sensible, the guitarist. The crazy guy with the axe is the drummer. It's Rat Scabies.
Amazing.
And I just remember I was completely in awe, him and his drumming. It just, I was, completely captured watching him and watching him play. And, the crazy thing was they had to play 2 songs. They didn't even get through the second song before Rat Scabies was smashing in his gear up.
Amazing. He's famously, didn't he just set his drums on fire or something? Is that
he didn't set them on fire, but he completely, completely obliterates them. And he's got his snare drum, he's whacking them, the cymbals. You can find it on YouTube now, it makes for good viewing. But the thing is, the craziness of it as well, probably really grabbed me. And to just try and put it into context, could you imagine watching later with Jules Holland and seeing a band and they don't even get through the second song that they're there to promote their record before they're completely smashing everything up?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It wasn't everybody. It was Rat Scabies that was doing it. And anyway, I remember it wasn't just, or even the smashing up bit, but I remember that was my moment. It's like, at the end, I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a drummer.
Yeah, nice. I bet.
And that's where the journey began for me with the instrument, you know.
Yeah. That's such a cool story, actually, to find out that's how you kind of decided that you wanted to play the drums. So go from then on. How long until you got your first drum kit, or until you played a set of drums?
It felt like a very long time, but in reality, it was probably under a year.
Cool.
I mean, as you can imagine, you know, I had this, you know, like moment of, that's it, I'm going to be a drummer. But convincing my parents that I was going to be one,
yeah, it's always
that they should get me a kit was, you know, like was a job that was going to be time consuming and would take some undertaking, you know.
Exactly.
But and especially after the guitar thing, because of the guitar incident and my dad being a musician, and you know, as we know, drums, the noise, the amount of space they take, of course. It's natural. My parents were very reluctant, you know.
I think most parents are.
I
think most parents probably are.
Definitely. You know, even kind of, musician ones, you know, musical parents, especially with the drums, you know. Yeah. And I lived in a very small house. It was, you know, it's a cottage, you know, it's like a, you know, so there wasn't a lot of space and you know, the noise of it all and everything as well.
Yeah.
But I kept badgering. I was persistent and, you know, and I was obsessed. You know, I was drawing pictures of drum kits. I was looking at pictures, you know, I sent away for catalogs, you know, anything like that. And then kind of sort of, you know, fast forward that close to a year. And one of my dad's friends, who was a drummer, must have decided he was retiring or giving up or something like that. And I suppose, you know, my dad must have told him about, you know, my interest and whatnots in playing the drums or wanting to play the drums. And they must have come to some arrangement. So the agreement I had with my dad was we would go round to this gentleman's house whose name was Matty. And, you know, he would set up the kit and I would have a go. And if I had, you know, a semblance of ability or, you know, rhythm to me, you know, my dad would get the kit.
Yeah.
So, of course, you know, super excited, we went round and, you know, and I jumped on the kit and I was able to knock out, you know, basic rhythm and a little fill. And, you know, I understood about, you know, the relationship between the hi-hat and the ride cymbal in rock drumming, you know.
Yeah.
And so that was it. I got the kit. But of course, what I had been doing as well, like every drummer, was I was tapping on everything. And I remember I had pens when I was in school, and I'd set up my books, and you know, my geography case would be a symbol, and I'd be sort of you know, tapping like that. So it was a bit of a surprise to me when I got on the kit, and I had some, you know, ability and organization that was already in place. So
yeah.
So that's how, you know, that's how it came for me to actually go from wanting to be a drummer to actually the next step of having a drum kit, you know.
Amazing. So yeah, that's great. So what was your first band then that you actually started, and then kind of how did it progress from there? I know there's a long story, but you know, a shortened version of your story from then to actually, you know, playing professionally.
Well, my first proper band, which was a band I formed with my friends called Alternative Attack, that kind of took me to sort of like to becoming, you know, if you will, you know, that band I worked from the, you know, the beginnings up until its inevitable ending when I started to play with more, you know, well-known punk bands of the day, if you like. Not like the likes of Your Damned and Killing Joke or New York Dolls, but English Dogs, Sacrilege. You know, they were bands of that era, you know, by now we're talking more than mid-80s. Well, late, you know, for me, 87.
Right, okay.
So that was my first band. But I'd done stuff in school, you know, where I'd worked with a couple of other guys and, you know, we played in the local talent contest and, you know, kind of not won.
Yeah.
But, you know, that they were the first guys I played with. But my first proper band, which was, you know, a punk band called Alternative Attack. And that was with sort of slightly older guys, you know, because I was still in school then. And, you know, so when I played my first proper gig, if you like, you know, I was 15. And that was with Alternative Attack. So that was really the beginnings of the journey, you know.
Great, yeah. Similar to me. My first gig in my own band was with a bunch of guys who were older than me. So similar kind of thing. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I obviously mentioned some of the, the bigger acts that you've played with. So I know we could talk for hours about this, but what would you say were like your career highlights so far? The most memorable kind of times or tours or gigs or festivals or
I mean, the highlights, because I've spoken about this before, it's pretty consistent. Each highlight has been a milestone of doing, for instance, that first gig.
Yeah.
I look back and still feels like a career highlight. It's very, it's very clear in my mind, the whole gig, and not only because of the fact that I broke my hand a few days before the gig.
Oh no! What?
Yeah. So I was hitching, with the old thumbing to go, to a village just outside where I lived along a main road. And I remember I'd gone with a guitarist that few days before to buy an amp, and we'd come back to to town. He'd drop me off, and he said, "You look after those hands, ready for Monday," which is a funny night for a gig, but it was like a college social Christmas party or something.
Okay.
And I remember it's Monday, so. Anyway, I was hitching, and and I had my hand out, sort of as you go, and a car hit my hand.
Oh.
Well, it actually hit my sholdder, and I spun round and hit my hand.
Oh my God!
So anyway, the show must go on and all that. So, with a lot of kind of sort of deep heat, painkillers, and a few pints actually.
All right, at that age, nice.
Nice. I got through it, but that felt like a highlight at the time, and I often look back at it and think, then maybe my first gig out in North Wales, this is kind of going on, 2 years or something. That felt like it, but first time playing in Europe, first time playing for like a name band, like when I first played for English Dogs and we played the gig, and I thought, wow, I'm up here playing these songs, original songs to an audience. Yeah. That have come here to watch this band playing these songs, that really felt like one. And then of course, playing with Morrissey was of course one, was another highlight, but not just because I sort of say playing with him, but more because I'd always had this dream, or I'd set in my mind. I've always wanted to go to America, loved America, loved the shows when I was younger, the cop shows and whatnots and all of that kind of stuff. But I set this, ridiculous thing, in my own mind that I wouldn't go there until I played there. My first time going to America had to be playing a show. Now, obviously, I wouldn't have minded where or how that happened, but that was, how I wanted to do it. So going with Morrissey and sort of playing, like the first Coachella festival.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Was amazing. I mean, we did play, like a couple of warm-up shows before it, but, so that we were, in good shape for Coachella. But, that was, like a hell of a moment,
Yeah. So what kind of year was that?
That was 99.
99. I'm trying to create the timeline in my head. See.
Yeah. So, I mean, by then, we've kind of gone. I mean, I spent a lot of the 90s, like in a band called War Dance, and, we toured Europe, and, there was a good scene in Europe for kind of, hardcore and punk, but the scene in the UK at the time was terrible,
Oh, right,
so,
okay.
Your bread and butter work was in mainland Europe. So I spent a lot of time from, because I moved from North Wales to the city Peterborough when I'm in 89. And that's when things really started to, the ante was up, I mean, I was doing stuff before, as well. So I was with Sacrilege, and, Sacrilege had a good deal. We were signed to Under One Flag, which was a subsidiary of Music for Nations, and Music for Nations had Metallica and whatnot, of course. So, it was as good as you could get label-wise and everything, But that was while I was still in North Wales. So that's kind of gone a bit back and forth on sort of my playing career.
That's all right. No, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and then you know, after that, you know, there's all of the artists that I played for. I mean, you know, I missed out the Damned, of course, you know. Yeah. So before Morrissey, I got to play for the Damned, the guys that
your hero,
where I'd got the whole thing that I was going to play.
So how did that come about? How did you kind of get the position, or did you audition? How did you find out they were looking for someone? And
well, I was playing in a band called Jolt, and I mean, what had happened was I'd done the whole European touring thing with this band War Dance, and who I'd been involved in since its inception until it finished in '96. And you know, the thing is in, you know, all my years up to that, then you couldn't think being in alternative music of it being a musical career. It just didn't exist. You know, it's like none of those bands or anybody had major labels and that kind of backing. You know, you might do kind of okay touring and you know, and playing and working, but even then, when you came home and stopped, you know, you'd have to have other work or whatever, you know, and that's how I got into teaching. Actually, you know, that's another thing that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you will come back to it. But you know, about '96 when War Dance finished, you know, record labels or major record labels were much more interested in alternative bands and music. By then, you know, the whole Nirvana thing had happened, Green Day, Offspring.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly kind of, you know, punky or alternative, you know, or more high energy music was kind of the order of the day again. So suddenly I was seeing people that were having a career in it, not necessarily a long career, but something of a career. So I, you know, decided that really what I needed to do, the obvious thing was kind of get myself, you know, in on the London scene or be playing in a London band and you know, and start doing what you have to do, you know, making connections and
networking,
playing and stuff like that. So that's what I did. I actively started looking for, you know, like a band that was in London that I thought, you know, would suit and you know, that I would fit in with and that were popular, you know, or even, you know, signed if, you know, you were lucky enough.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I joined a band called Jolt, and the main man of Jolt was a guy called Mark Kedge, who had formerly been in a band called Senseless Things, and they were, you know, a very popular band, and you know, he was a great front man, and you know, he just finished in this, you know, really great band that were popular. So, you know, I joined up with that band, and he decided then to kind of go more DIY and form his own record label. And that gained a lot of respect, especially, you know, from, you know, the press and you know, and everything like that. So the band were popular. So, you know, we were going around, we were, you know, releasing records on the label, but he had a good publishing deal. So, you know, there was, you know, like proper money behind it and whatnot. And we were doing that for 2 or 3 years, but we never landed the deal that he really wanted, you know, the major record deal. And it was starting to sort of, you know, lose its momentum. But one of the shows that we got to do was supporting the Damned at the Forum in Kentish Town in London.
Nice.
And the agent for Jolt was also the agent for the Damned and for Morrissey.
All right, okay.
So there must have been something going on in the Damned camp, and it wasn't Rat Scabies who was drumming for them then. They had a guy called Gary Dreadful. The Damned had reformed a few years early without Rat Scabies.
Right.
And so they had this drummer called Gary Dreadful, and something must have been going on in their camp, you know.
Maybe he was a dreadful player.
He was.
No, I don't know.
You know, actually, well, he was dreadful for them. He wasn't the most, you know, the Damned has, I mean, I don't like to, you know, diss other drummers, and I'm not dissing him actually, but he wasn't the most appropriate drummer for them, you know. There's a style of playing that goes with the Damned, and it's not just a style that, you know, a drummer can do. You really got to understand the nuts and bolts behind it.
Yeah.
And when I actually seen him play the first show with him. I went to their first show when they were reformed, and nobody knew if it was going to be Rat Scabies playing with them or not, you know.
Right, okay.
But as soon as I seen the kit set up, I thought, that's not Rat Scabies going to be playing tonight.
No,
you know, of course, you know.
Yeah, we know the drummers. I guess we would know this if it was a different
just tell
kit.
by the angle of the toms or something like that.
Yeah, well, how many toms there are and things like that.
Yeah. So anyway, so we were playing this show, and because you know I was just made up to be on the same bill as the Damned. I was, you know, a complete fanboy.
Yeah.
And anyway, we played and they played, and we watched them. And of course, because we had the access, you know, from playing, after the gig, I went up to the dressing room, you know, and I started talking to Rat Scabies. He obviously wasn't there. Started talking to Captain Sensible. And, I'd had a few drinks, and I was kind of, you know, I started playing drums because of the Damned and Rat. And when I said Rat, he groaned. and I said, I've said something, you know. And then he pretty much turned to me and says, you know, are you busy what are you up to next year? Are you busy?
Well, simple as that.
And I was kind of, well, you know, kind of, why? You know? Yeah. And it was all a bit sort of, you know, a bit sort of coy, I suppose, you know. But I was like, why? Do you need me to drum? What, are you looking for a new drummer? And he was like, you know, he said something along the lines of something was going on. Yeah. And then he gave me his phone number.
Wow.
So when, you know, I left there with a friend of mine who was helping me. I was like, you know, I'm sure Captain Sensible just asked me if I'd be interested in playing for the Damned.
Yeah. So you must have impressed him that night.
I couldn't quite be sure.
Yeah.
And then my friend said to me, God, you know, it's weird. You know, Sensible and Vanian were watching you from the side were watching the band from the side of the stage. He goes, you know, Dave Vanian never watches a support band, you know. Yeah. But that obviously was what it was.
Yeah, they must have heard the drumming and thought, oh, that guy sounds good. Just go and check him out for a bit.
Yeah, and I think, you know, possibly the agent had maybe said,
check this guy out.
Listen, you know, you've got the support band you're playing with, you know, have a look at their drummer, you know, or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So that's how that came about.
Great story. Really great story. Yeah. And then obviously, So how long did you stay with them?
Well, I wasn't with the Damned very long at all, really. I was under a year, but because in the meantime, well, what happened was around that same time, or even slightly before, while I was playing with this band Jolt, we were, you know, playing all the kind of sort of places in London, and, you know, there was always good turnouts. And I suppose, you know, when a band's got a reputation, you know, the hip people or the movers and shakers or whatever you want to call them go to these gigs. You know, it's in their interest to, isn't it? And you know, other musicians and whatnot to, you know, hearing about a band, go and check them out. And one of the guys who came to one of the gigs before this whole damn thing was the guitarist from Morrissey, one of the guitarists called Alan White.
Right.
And he'd come up to me after the gig. I was taking my gear apart, and he came up to me and was like, hey, man, you know, really enjoyed the set. Lovely drumming. And I always remember he said to me, oh, well, you remind me a bit, some of the drumming parts you were playing reminds me of, you know, some of the drumming off the Cult, the Love album, you know.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, well, I know what it is because I've taken a part of one of those songs.
Oh, right. Wow.
So, you know, we started, you know, really chatting about that, and you know, and then he told me, I play guitar for Morrissey actually and whatnot. So I was like, oh, cool, you know. And then at the end of the conversation, you know, I sort of said the obvious thing of, you know, if you ever hear of any work or, you know of anybody looking for a drummer, please, you know, bear me in mind. I'm always up for more work. And he was like, yeah, he goes, I will, because I know I can get in contact through you, you know, through Mike Hink, which was the name of the agent, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, when I was actually having a, you know, like you know, I keep doing this. It's probably because the screen's small. I can only feel it if I can do my hand action.
Oh, sorry.
When I was in the audition, which was also a bit of a rehearsal, really, because the audition was the whole set.
Yes, it's a long,
With the Damned.
It's a long
They
audition.
mentioned that, Morrissey was interested in using me to, to play for him, And I remember saying something quite derogatory, like, oh, I'll never play, for him or whatever, and I didn't think I ever would. I certainly didn't think I'd ever kind of get any kind of invite to.
Yeah.
But towards the tail end of the summer, when I'd been in the Damned a while, out of the blue, I just get invited to go and have an informal audition for Morrissey. What the word that I got was that Morrissey had been invited to play the first Coachella Festival, and he needed a drummer, and I was given the date of the festival, and would I be interested? So I was, I checked the dates, and of course I thought, yeah, I haven't got anything in with the Damned at that time, and I'd love to go to America.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And play this festival, So I was invited down for a very informal audition. It was so informal, I wasn't even given any songs to learn.
Oh, wow.
I literally went to, down to the audition, and funnily enough, it was where Jolto was rehearsed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bit of a kind of typical, crappy but functional rehearsal room, studio complex, in London. And I knew Morrissey wasn't going to be there. It was just going to be a couple of the band members. It wasn't even Alan, who I'd met at a Joel gig. It was, like Boz Boorer, who's, was or is Morrissey's, musical director, and Gary Day, the bass player. So I hadn't been given any songs to learn. I didn't know any of the songs anyway.
Yeah.
But one of the funny things when I went there, Dane, is I knew like all the kits, were crap. I'd used all the rooms, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that kit's got the dodgy tom arm, and that kit's got the floor tom that always sounds crap and whatnot,
Yeah, I know.
And so when I got there, I was like, what room is it? And whatever, room 5. I thought, oh yeah, okay, I know it's that kit. So I had, what I needed, my breakables, like cymbals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting point because, this was a good thing. So I went in and I was pretty sussed and organized, but the drummer who went in before me, who was like, a respected pro, didn't take anything. I suppose he was thinking it was all going to be laid on, and why shouldn't he? It was an audition for Morrissey,
Yeah.
But of course, he didn't have cymbals or, so he's probably having to use, the crap that they had there or whatever. And he was probably, I suppose, flustered. So when I, did my bit, and there was somebody there videoing, basically, I was playing with a band, and there was somebody videoing it, and the video gets sent to Morrissey. And there was only 3 people invited to go down and try.
Yeah.
So, I did my bit, and played, and
But it's like, what did they ask you to play then?
And I got on well with the guys, and that was it. I sort of thought, well, it doesn't matter if I don't get this. I'm playing in the band of my dreams. I'm cool.
Yeah.
But if I do get this little opportunity, grab it while it's there. And anyway, about a week or so later, Mike Hink, the agent, got in touch with me. He said, look, I think it's highly probable or likely you are going to get a call tomorrow saying that you've got the Morrissey gig,
Wow.
And I was like, oh, God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to make a choice who you're going to play for. And I was like, well, why is that? I've checked the dates. He was like, no, he wants you to join his band. It's you're going to be his drummer. It's not just for a show.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, God,
It's tough.
What do I do?
Yeah, that's a tough decision.
So I had this sort of 24 hours, and I was mulling it over, and I was thinking, do I do it? No, I won't. Well, what's it going to offer? What's the work? And with absolutely no disrespect to the Damned, when I got the call offering it me, I had been in the Damned long enough to see that, they weren't at their most organized at that time. You know, it was a bit of a, a difficult time for them, I suppose.
Okay.
You know, they'd reformed. They weren't used to being the kind of band that were DIY. You know, they obviously they kind of come together where there was a lot more money from record labels and promotions, and at that time they were just going out and playing live. And nobody was really interested in signing them. Certainly no majors, and so it was all a bit of a kind of disorganized and not their best period for them, I don't suppose. It was for me. I was loving it. It was like I was playing these great gigs, playing these songs. But when I got offered the Morrissey thing, when it was a serious offer on the table, I had to look at what was there at that time.
Yeah.
I had a young baby daughter, all the usual trappings, and I had to sort of make my decision based on what was there and what I was being offered at the time. So, I mean, I don't think I would have left the Damned if I hadn't conveniently worked out that a good friend, drumming friend of mine, who was the original drummer of English Dogs, who I'd replaced 10 years before or whatever, and we'd become good friends and whatnot. Suddenly he became available. So, I said, would you be interested in doing it? He was like, yeah, would I, if you thought that there'd be any chance. And so I told him the situation, and then I said, look, because we had an American tour coming up with the Damned, but I still hadn't filled out any paperwork or anything, which shows the kind of chaos of it all.
Right, okay, yeah. And well, I imagine that's because I've never done that myself, right? I know it's a long process, the visas and all that.
It is, and I and it's complicated and it's expensive,
Yeah.
And so he said he was up for doing it, and then I thought, well, the best situation or scenario is I take this opportunity and this offer, but I'm not letting them down, and and I'm putting somebody that's equal capability in my place, and he actually ended up playing with him for the next 20 years. Then,
there you go.
So he fared a lot better time wise than I did, but I had to work. I had to work and make my decisions based on the time.
You
don't have like sort of regrets or anything like that, but
no,
and of course then I went away and at the time of my life, playing, around the world, never mind just America. That was just the beginnings of it,
Yeah.
And so that kind of carried on for a few years, and then the lineup changed and it became more American based with the band, and because you're in as a session musician, you're not. It's not like it's not a real band in that sense.
It's
a
different.
band that's playing at that time, it's so.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from that, of course, and but yeah, so they're all highlights, but there's been highlights after. There's been like a lot of highlights after, and I mean, even what I was doing recently, even playing Bloodstock was a highlight. A highlight after everything we've all gone through the past 18 months.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a new highlight.
Yeah. No, that's quite. I know you told me this in person about how you ended up joining Memoriam, because musically it is, I would say, very different to all the bands you've been in previously. Because I'm not an expert on my metal, but I think you described it as a death metal band. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's that's
what they call it,
where they categorize themselves, old school death metal. In fact,
right? Okay.
I mean, I don't know enough about death metal to be able to differentiate myself, but if this gives you a bit of clarity, I mean, when I was invited to, first I was invited to record the album, which was a bit of a surprise, because really I'd spent the 15 or so years previously predominantly being a live drummer. Most of my work that was coming in was tours and I'm playing live, and the bands that I were in, I was in a band called Conflict for 11 years, that I've got, like a strong legacy in the, like the second wave of punk, the 80s political punk. And, they can just always keep playing. And that's what they pretty much did. I never did any recording with them. And then I even went around the world with Steve Ignorant from Crass doing a Crass set. That had never been, he'd never done that. And we went everywhere. That was like a real highlight, performing those songs, everywhere, where Crass never got to, Crass never really toured, but again, their legacy because of their profile and their politics and their DIY ethics, they're serious legend. You even see that their logo, you even see the likes of David Beckham wearing a T-shirt,
Oh, wow.
Probably unknowingly, but
he probably doesn't know. Yeah, he probably don't know what the hell is on about. Is that all those Kardashians wearing Slayer T-shirts and stuff?
That's right. Yeah, but it's that kind of thing. Yeah. So I've been, pretty much, active as a live player.
Yeah, that is
I was doing recording and bits and bobs, but it was when Memoriam got in touch with me, or Frank, the bass player who I'd worked with 30 years before in a band called Sacrilege. I thought he wanted me for gigs. I just made that presumption. He was like, no, we need you to record the next album, and I was like, oh, okay, when is it? He was like 6 weeks. And I was like, that kind of seems like, a fair amount of time, but of course, everybody had holidays booked in, and, I did. In fact, I was on holiday, and I had another holiday coming up, so.
Nice.
I was on a short break visiting my parents when I got the call. And so I said, well, what, I haven't heard Memoriam, but I know, you're involved. And what's it like? He said, well, it's like old school death metal. And I thought, oh, no, it's like, I know what that kind of, the death metal playing, it's all blast beats, and, that's not my strongest, forte playing wise. And I'm not overly interested in that kind of playing,
Yeah.
But he said, and respect to the people who do it, I know how committed they are to it. So I wouldn't be so, even slightly confident to think, yeah, just give me a week or two and I'll be, blast beating along with the best of them.
Exactly. I know. I feel like that. I'm like, I can't do that kind of stuff. But like, I know
it's a very, it's a very developed and dedicated style of playing, and so I've got all the respect to the guys that do it and girls.
Yes.
But he said, well, I'll send you some of the stuff, and he sent me, like a couple of the tracks, and when I heard, I was like, ooh, there was no singing on them. It was just the basic demos, and I thought, oh, hold on, this is old school death metal. I can hear something in this. To me, it sounded more like the old thrash metal that I used to play and love. So it was like, I was thinking, okay, I can hear a bit of Slayer in this, and a bit of Sepultura, and and I could even sort of utilize my my Exodus and Anthrax drumming influences in this kind of stuff, and definitely Dave Lombardo, and so I felt, when I heard it, I thought, okay, there's a meeting point here. This isn't as extreme as I thought, or as far removed from my own playing. So I went and had a bash with one of the songs. I picked the song and went down my rehearsal room, and I thought, right, what am I going to base my playing on? I thought, well, let's think Lombardo with the feet, and let's think a bit Neil Peart with some of the rolls, and and I tried something, and I thought, what, this can work. So I went back to to Frank, and so I said, yeah, I've had a little go. I think I could do it. I'd like to do it, and
Great.
So sign me up for the album. You've got a drummer. If you're happy that you're confident that I can do it. And he was. There was no audition process. He was like, I know you can do it. I know you learn songs quick. And
that's cool.
But of course, in reality, I had far less time to sort of listen to the material and learn it. But we had enough time in the studio. I mean, Memoriam, they've got in the modern day sense of things, they've got a decent record label, with
Nuclear Blast, isn't it? They're on Nuclear Blast, I believe.
They were on Nuclear Blast, but now they're on Reaper.
Oh, okay.
Reaper Records, which is basically, from what I'm led to believe, when Nuclear Blast got bought out, a lot of, like the core people in Nuclear Blast in Europe have formed Reaper Records. Something's obviously happened.
Interesting. Okay.
And they've taken some of the, Memoriam had fulfilled their 3-album contract, so they were open, and Reaper, the guy from Nuclear Blast knew this, and
I get it.
Basically put an offer on the table that I guess matched Nuclear Blast, and the band felt, well, because Nuclear Blast is a very big label and they're a smaller band, so it makes more sense for them to go with a label where they get like a little bit. More prioritized.
Yeah, I totally understand that. More attention.
I mean, we know the drill, don't we? Everybody does this, So we've got a 3-album deal with them. So it was a decent budget. So I had time to record, and
cool.
I'd worked about half the album out. I was pretty concise. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. So they were the songs I did first, and to get a feel, and then as we went later on, it was like, right, okay, I'm going to need a couple of hours to work on this, in the morning, and then we'll start recording. And, Russ Russell, who was the producer and engineer, he had plenty to be doing with cleaning tracks up or edits and all this stuff. So we got into like a really good, little method of working, But an interesting point with it is, that again, with everything that's been going on with lockdown, when I was recording the album, none of the band were there.
Yeah, this is seems to be a common story, because it was similar when we recorded our album. It was just me and my brother, who's the producer, and no one else was there when I played my drums. Yeah,
I mean, I've never ever had that before, and so in some ways it's great, because you're like, right, I'm going to try this, I'm going to put this in, if it works, great. But sometimes you really do sort of, you're looking about thinking, I wouldn't mind excuse me. I wouldn't mind somebody to bounce off to tell me that I'm going in the right direction, or I'm going completely, in the wrong direction.
Especially in your particular situation where you were playing for a band you never played with. At least with me, it's my own band, and I've jammed. I've been playing with them for years. So it must have been weird not kind of getting feedback from an actual band member saying, "Oh yeah, this is exactly what we want," or this is perfect, or
that's
no,
right.
or no, that's not what we had in mind. Can you try something else? So bizarre.
Definitely. I mean, fortunately, because Russell is very, he's the man in that, that a lot of people go to, that play those more extreme forms of metal and whatnot.
Right.
He's got a good ear, of course,
Of course.
But it was an interesting experience, but he liked, we bonded over Neil Peart, because when I was setting my gear up, and when I was doing a bit of the rehearsal before, I decided to add some concert toms, so that I could do the kind of the big rolls round, and as I was setting up, he goes, "Oh, I'm going for a bit of a Neil Peart vibe," and I was like, "Yeah." Exactly. Do you like him? And he said, "Yeah, I really like him."
Who doesn't?
So I thought to myself, well, it's like, cool, that's good, because I've got a fair few sort of, like Neil Peart inspired bits. And the first song we recorded had a couple of, like of those mighty style right round, the whole kit rolls.
Yeah, I know you mean.
And when I was doing it, he was laughing. He's like, yeah, that's great. So it was a really good way to start the session, and it instilled a lot of confidence in me to feel comfortable to try stuff, and But I was trying to bring a lot of stuff to the record that I thought, would you ever hear this in death metal? There's a song where I'm playing the beat that's got press rolls in it and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I wish I'd listened to the whole album before this interview, because I guess I did another one last week. I think it was Friday. So I haven't prepared as much as I would normally do in terms of listening to your back catalogue, but I stuck some of it on this morning, And my wife's working in the next room. I said, "Oh, I know it's a bit early, but I'm going to be putting some noisy music on that you're not going to like for a little while." But yeah, I thought it was really cool. It was really like quite groovy. Like,
yeah, well, the thing is that, you know, probably like many of us, you know, I love all sorts of drumming, and I try to bring it, you know, a little bit of it all to the table.
yeah,
You know, it's like, you know, I'm not afraid to sort of, you know, like that press roll thing ended up sounding like a bit of a Steve Gadd inspired,
nice.
you know, drum rhythm. It's not a kind of complete rip off of Steve Gadd, and it's not meant to be, and it's not, and of course, you know, it's in a completely different musical style, but you know, I love Will Cahoon from Living Colour, and I love a load of the sort of funky drummers. So
Yeah,
I like it to have a certain bounce. I like it in my punk drumming. You know, I like it to have a bounce. I don't like it when sort of things sound sort of clumsy and kind of, you know, like sort of labored. You know,
yeah, I know
I
what you
like
mean.
jazz drumming, and you know, I really love jazz drumming, and so these things are in my mind even when I'm playing a death metal song, you know, and so it's interesting that you said that it sounded quite bouncy or whatever, because
Yeah.
that's what's translating, and I'm glad that it is. You know, I'm glad that you said that.
No, definitely. I'll stick the rest of it on later. But yeah, the first couple of tracks, I was like, oh, this is obviously it was heavy, but I was expecting, like you mentioned, more like I said, I don't know enough about metal. So any listeners who are proper metal fans, I'm an idiot. You know, if it's not one of the big four, I probably don't know where you are. So like, I'm not really into my metal, but I was expecting like more kind of blast beat fast kind of, lots of double kick drum kind of stuff. I was expecting that, but it was like, yeah, just kind of like groovy. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that comes across. Of course, there is a hell of a lot of double bass drum in there.
Yeah, there's definitely,
in comparison to what I'm normally used to doing. I mean, I've had to work my ass off on my double bass drumming, since it, and I'm still doing it. And that gig in Bloodstock, I suppose, was kind of the culmination of the test of my work over the past year, really, you know.
It's amazing. I imagine you would have come on so far, and I think being in that position, kind of forced you into, obviously, I presume, hours and hours of practicing double kick drums and different kind of patterns.
That's right.
That's forced you to do it, and now you've done it, and now you've got those skills, and presumably you'll always be able to do something to that kind of level in the future now, which is great.
Well, yeah, I hope so. And I mean, I'm keeping on with it, because, of course, I don't feel I'm quite there yet. You know what it's like. It's like anything you develop. It's like, okay, can I play that song? Yeah, I can. You know, okay, there's this song. It's faster. You know, okay, I've got to work towards that. Then now I've got to play a set. You know, and you know the original drummer. You know, he played an awful lot of double kick. So it's a staple part of their, the band's sound and part of their diet. And interestingly, when I got sent the demos, Scott, who, is the main songwriter, he does some great drum programming. It's not all, it's not kind of like the done deal, but you can take a lot from it.
Yeah.
But I was like, before, when I was just learning them, I was like, well, how much do you want me to stick to the parts? Because, they're good. What you've already done. And they were like, well, try anything you like, but make sure that the double bass drum parts are in it.
Oh, right. So, yeah.
So I'm open to do what I like, but as soon as it launches into that double kick, that's got to stay.
Yeah. That's because obviously I'm assuming like the guitarist or whatever, writing the riffs, are writing them with the double kick is going to match this, or or this double kick pattern is. So I can understand from the songwriting point of view, like they kind of want to keep that.
That's right, because it adds kind of a it's where a lot of the weight comes from for the parts. But the other thing with them, and you'll know this as well, Dane, and any of the other drummers that do this kind of stuff will know. It's not just about the playing the parts. It's the parts are for long sections. It's like, I mean, like, the first two songs we play live in a set have pretty much got, the consistent, double kicks going on. And that's like for going on like 8 minutes.
Yeah. That's yeah.
So
That's
it's not just about the playing it; it's about can you keep it going. It's a marathon, you
it
know.
is. Yeah, yeah. Was it what kind of out of interest? I'm always because my double kick technique is not great, and I'm working on it a little bit. I haven't worked on it as much as I should. But what kind of foot technique do you apply? Because there's lots of different ones, isn't there, to kind of to get to that speed. What do you use personally?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, it's a work in progress, but you know, I tend to work with a kind of, you know, the typical heel up, but trying to sort of work from, you know, from. I mean, I'm doing it with my hands, but
Yeah.
but from the ankles to a point.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, my legs are still moving, but what I'm trying to do is find it where it feels somewhat free floating.
Yeah, so you're not using your leg muscles as much.
It's a little bit like your hands, where you sort of feel like, you know, you can kind of keep it going. There's not a lot of unnecessary work going on.
I think that's the trick to it is, from what I've kind of the research I've done, especially with like ankle technique to apply to get to those speeds. You don't want to be using your calf muscle too much. A little, I think you need to use it a little bit to get the movement, and you definitely don't want to be using your upper leg in any way. Not muscle. Obviously, your knees need to move, but you don't want to be using those muscles. And it's really strange, especially if you've been playing for so long and you're trying to adapt your kind of your usual. Right. Yeah, it's hard, but I find it fascinating because I don't play that kind of style of music, but I would like to be able to at least get my speed up a bit. Maybe a bit more independence with the left foot. And
I suppose the only time you're ever going to do that is when you really have to, isn't it? I've always felt the same. I mean, I've played, double, double pedal really, as opposed to sort of double kick, for 30 years, and I've always had a certain amount of ability with it, and I'm all right with it. But I've always wanted to have sort of more ability, but I've never pushed it till last year.
That's great.
When I thought, well, I've got to, But I like the challenge when I was offered or put in there, offered the opportunity. I thought, this is a really good opportunity to finally
knuckle down.
To push my feet. This is my reason now. I have to do it.
Yeah. So maybe I need to join a death metal band to get my skills up.
Are you and your brothers write a death metal song?
I just know they wouldn't want to do that. I don't think. I don't know. It's not their thing. It's like it's not really like I appreciate it, and sometimes if I watch it live, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But it's just not my thing. Like, no. But I think if I was in that position, and I'd be like, right, I've got a deadline. I've got to achieve this by then. You'd find the time to work on it when you.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Drum for the Song. I just wanted to briefly interrupt the interview to tell you about my Patreon page, which is a place where you can support the podcast and, of course, support myself. You can sign up to one of the 3 tiers on there. There's one that's £3 a month, one that is £5 a month, and one that is £10 a month. There are loads and loads of exclusive benefits to signing up, including bonus episodes, merch discounts, Christmas card for myself. If you sign up to the top tier, I'll send you a pair of my drumsticks. Loads of other stuff. So go check it out. It's patreon.com/drum for the song. And another way you could support me if you're interested, if you're not bothered about the Patreon thing, if you go to my official website, drumforthesong.com, you can send a donation via PayPal. So, thanks for watching this and enjoy the rest of the show.
Drum for the Song podcast.
Something, I mean, this is like just a small part of what I love about playing. I love the extremities of, the styles, it's something that I've got off on, since I was young, it's like, I think I've told you before, I mentioned, that I played for HR from Bad Brains.
Yeah.
Now that was like, another one of those career highlights because, they've been my favorites, since back in, when I not long started playing. I mean, they used to blow me away with their punk and, how, beautifully they would go from that to to playing these lovely reggae tunes. And, and I've always, that was my first, opening to playing different styles of music. I remember when I'd been playing a few years, I thought, you know what, I'm kind of, an okay hardcore punk drummer, but I can't do anything else. It's, I've been playing the instrument a few years, and I decided that I wanted to, I thought reggae would be good because, a lot of punk bands had that kind of connection with it, and there's that whole thing with that. And I was a big fan of Bad Brains, and so I started, trying a little bit at home, trying to play. And then there was a local bunch of guys that were more hippies, really. There was no Rastafarians in Holyhead. But there were these bunch of guys that loved reggae that were older than me, and they were looking for a drummer, and I got involved with them, and it was a really great opportunity to try and play this different style. But as soon as I started doing it, I realized just how incredibly difficult it is when you're playing a musical instrument. You can't take it for granted that, okay, I'm an able musician, so I can play like this. That doesn't happen at all.
No.
I'm sure you know. So when I first started trying to play reggae, everything, like, I don't know if you've ever tried to play a one drop, but, it's incredibly confusing when you come from the world of rock.
It's another world.
Effectively putting the bass drum down where you'd normally put the snare.
Exactly.
And then, when you side stick, you're playing around it. So it's almost like the limbs change. And, once you get a feel for it, it becomes more natural. But to begin with, it's a completely, it's a mind fuck,
Yeah. Yeah, no, like you said, coming from rock and punk, it's completely alien. And I've never really spent enough time trying. Like, I can kind of do a really blagged, bass drum on 3 kind of vibe, but I'm not, it doesn't sound authentic in any way. And I'm just doing my own kind of version of it. I've never been in that position where I've had to learn to play a reggae song. Because I never did the lessons and the grades. I didn't really, I think they do teach a bit of it, I think maybe in the rock school stuff. Like we have in the UK.
It gets very, very, like there's lots that gets overlooked in the kind of world of educational drumming, I think, and reggae is one of them. Everybody loves Stuart Copeland.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of, for a lot of people, could be their introduction to reggae drumming. I mean, he doesn't play reggae per se.
No.
But he's taken to me, Stuart Copeland is a great example of, basically merging 2 styles. I mean, he was coming at it very much from an energetic point of view, from the punk drummer,
Yeah.
Beyond the rock drummer, he's very sort of edgy and pushing forward. But then he was using like all these tricks of reggae drumming, and he blended them together, and the next thing you kind of got one of the most influential drummers of the 20th century.
Well, exactly, and that, I think he was such an important part of what made the Police sound so unique. I think the obviously Sting's incredible as well, but yeah, it's just so unique, and I think that drum, not just the style, but the sound that he's achieving as well.
That's right.
And
I mean, imagine if they didn't have someone like Stuart Copeland. It's like how would it worked out? But
if it was just me playing 4/4 beats or whatever, it wouldn't be the same.
Because I mean, obviously they're all good musicians, and Sting, like has proven to be, like a magnificent songwriter.
Yeah.
He's got great sounding voice, and and it all worked sort of really well with him. So, but going back to me playing with HR, when I had to learn the set, it was like, right, get my reggae head on, So, I was learning these songs that I'd grown up with and I loved, because, for those who don't know, the set that I did with HR was, was predominantly a reggae set. He's kind of kind of done with the fast and hardcore and, you know, full on aggressive music. And, you know, so I knew it was going to be essentially a reggae gig, you know.
Yeah. And you've got some of that on your YouTube channel, right?
I have. I've got a couple of songs on my YouTube channel. So,
yeah,
you know, it's there for people to check out. But, you know, getting my head back into that and, you know, devising a little setup and, because, you know, there's things you don't need and there's things you do need. You know, you don't need a ride cymbal with reggae.
Do you know? Okay, I didn't know that.
There's hardly any ever ride cymbal. I mean, you know, it's very occasional, but I mean, it's, you know, I think I've heard it like sort of maybe used two or three times in the thousands of reggae songs.
Oh, wow. I see. I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
No, but you do need well, you don't need, but it's a very good idea to have a timbale.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. I don't actually own one of those, actually, which is a shame.
No, you don't?
I don't know. I don't have one. You could kind of achieve a similar sound with like a snare. I could have a side snare, knock the snare off and tune it up. Yeah, similar.
Tune it up a bit. Yeah. And, you know, so, you know, little things like that, you know, so you know, devising, getting the sounds I wanted. And because, you know, I knew we weren't going with the sound man, you know, couldn't trust on how, you know, they might, you know, dub the sound up. I wanted to get a lot of sound. So, you know, I put a wood block and cowbell, you know, in a place that I could play little simple percussive, you know, additional parts. And I had the splash cymbal on top of a crash, you know, just things to create different sounds.
Nice.
You know, my timbale was where you'd have your floor tom.
Okay.
And then the floor tom. So the floor tom would be like, you know, where a second floor tom would be.
Interesting.
So, you know, again, coming from a rock drummer's perspective, it's, you know, it's a different way of thinking, you know?
Yeah. That's good. It's good. I think like, I don't do it at all, and I should, but it's really good to sit yourself down behind a different kind of setup, and it makes you think differently and play. You'll probably get different ideas from being in that position. And I think, sadly, because of the variety of music I've been playing the last kind of 10 years, it's been quite similar. I've had a very similar setup all that time. And even my like electric kit that I've got in my practice room, I've got an extra tom on that actually, and that throws me off sometimes. But it's kind of like, I don't really experiment enough to change it up. And like, I'm getting older now. Maybe I should at least try some things. I might find something I really like.
Well, I think that the thing is, you know, from my perspective, you know, it's, you know, if you're not forced to do something quite different musically, there's not a reason to, is there?
I suppose, yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, my kit is the same. It's, you know, the way I have it set, you know, with the two rack toms but offset.
Yeah.
You know, the two crash cymbals, you know, the China to the right, you know, like you know, like a lot of rock drummers. You know, that's basically it. But then it's, you know, like, of course, I go to Memoriam, so now I've added the two, you know, extra concerts on, an extra set of hi-hats on the right-hand side of the kick, because I'm doing so much double kick. And,
yeah, that's cool.
You know, and I put a China, you know, like sort of a small effect China, where I'd normally have a splash cymbal, you know, because the splash just obviously isn't cutting it in that kind of music.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But I still like having something to hit there. So it's just really about adapting your fundamental kits. And I mean, one of my favorite drummers is a drummer called John Wright from a band called No Means Known. He's an incredible punk jazz drummer. You know, they're kind of like punk jazz. You know, intricate, clever, great musicians, you know, really good musicians. And he and his brother, Rob Wright, the bass player of Brothers, you know, so they kind of got that, you know, thing going that you must know that I'll never experience.
Yeah,
you know, the brotherly thing, but amazingly sort of telepathic towards each other, and they're playing and that. But he never changes his setup, Dane.
Oh, right, okay.
You can see footage from him from 1986. I mean, they've split up probably about 8 or 9 years ago, but the last time I seen him, same setup. He'd always have this weird, not weird, but this old Ludwig tom-tom that he was using kind of like a timbale. You know, always in the set, always in the same place, always the same setup, you know, always set up the same. You know, you'd look at it, you know, and you could think, right, there's 20 years difference between this footage and this footage. And, you know, even the cymbal height hasn't slightly altered or the angles of the cymbals, nothing's changed, you know.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So,
I don't feel too bad.
Adage with that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's fair enough. So let's talk. You know, you've mentioned that you're a teacher as well.
Yeah.
So I always talk about it on the podcast. I've never felt confident enough to really get into teaching. Maybe one day, but like, because no one ever really taught me. So I feel like I don't want to teach people bad habits, or I feel like, am I going to have the knowledge if they ask me something and I don't know, or how to do this? And I never really had the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, you coming from the background that you did as well, how did you kind of get into it? You kind of do it now when you're not on tour as well from your studio. Have you got any advice to anyone who might want to start teaching, like myself, or, you know, might want to get to that stage where they could teach?
Well, I mean, you know, I think that, you know, if you have, you know, the want to do it, then you should do it. You know, let's begin with that. But the first thing is you should want to do it. It shouldn't be like a kind of, I'm forced into this, or, you know, or, I've been doing it long enough, or, you know, I'm going to give lessons or whatever. They're not the right reasons.
No.
I mean, you know, it was a needs must for me. I'd made the move from North Wales to Peterborough to sort of be somewhere. I mean, you know, I wasn't in the thick of it in London, but I'd made the move, you know, mainly to just try and progress as a, you know, as a person and as a player, you know, and to have some, you know, semblance of a future, you know, which musically I knew I couldn't do in North Wales. And of course, you know, as I was saying, you know, around that time, I knew, you know, from how things were at that time, which is the turn of the 90s, I couldn't, you know, have a career playing the kind of music I wanted to play, you know, like I said earlier in this interview. So, you know, I knew of other people that were doing teaching, and I thought, you know, that's a good thing. You know, it's a good way of being in control of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, I'd always followed this punk ethic of, you know, DIY, do it yourself, find ways, you know, create your own work, you know, find ways to be of use, you know, offer a service, whatever, you know, I've taken that on board from the likes of Crass and, you know, be your own authority and all that. So I came to Peterborough and I had a couple and I needed work, you know, I was one of the driving forces from North Wales. There was just simply no work there.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to Peterborough, I had a couple of sort of lame jobs. And then I thought, no, I haven't come here to do this. You know, I want to be kind of involved on my instrument. That's what I've come for, to play music and you know, and work, you know, with my instrument of choice, the drums. So I thought that a good thing to do would be to teach as well. So I was seeing other people doing it locally and people that I was involved in musically here. So I basically just started by, you know, a couple of people would see me play and they would be like, you know, just give lessons. And I sort of thought, well, I don't, but, you know, maybe I should. And so then I bought, you know, I got some books, something I'd never done.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, like a teach yourself to play drums and teach yourself to read. So I started really, you know, immersing myself in that. The Rhythm Drum magazine at the time happened to have this feature monthly, how to learn to read music. I was looking at that. I was looking at books. I learned the book, you know. I sort of went through it and sort of, right, okay, quarter notes, eighths, okay, crotchets are quarter notes, you know, quavers are eighth, okay, this is a rhythm, you know, that's how this looks. Okay, odd time signatures, 7/8, I get it, it's 7/8 notes, you know, so I was educating myself and trying to be, you know, like, you know, considerably a number of steps ahead than the people I was teaching. And I actually developed. So I'm self-taught as well, you know. So it puts an interesting perspective on it because, you know, sometimes you find yourself teaching and, you know, you sort of think, wow, you know, this works. I should embrace this myself in my playing. Like, for instance, when you're learning something to play much slower,
Yeah.
It's something when you're self-taught you don't do. You tend to try and learn it at performance level. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you've got to break it down.
This, this feel, then you try to go, you're kind of going, boom, boom, boom. Okay, yeah, I'm getting it, and that's just doing it. That's self-taught because you're doing it almost like singing a part. If you were doing it more from an educated point of view, you might read it.
Yeah.
Or you might look at the notes, or you might use accounting, 1, 2, and actually find where the notes actually are and what are the 16th notes or what's the 8th note or, or whatever, so it's, the teaching side developed that, just by doing it, and always trying to make sure, you're a step ahead. And of course, in the meantime, I've now gone for lessons here and there. If I feel there's an area I'm playing, I want to, improve on, or I want better knowledge of, I'll go for a lesson.
Cool.
It's,
yeah.
I mean, it's not in a sort of being taught sense, but it's just like, I've gone to Steve White, for help with my jazz drumming, and he's helped me enormously.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah, because that's the thing. If you can't do something, obviously there's lots of stuff online these days, but it's not the same as being in there either on Zoom or in the room with someone you can actually talk with in real time, and they can show you what you're doing wrong or how, because you can sit there watching YouTube every day, and if you're stuck, all you can do is keep watching it. The same thing. Well, you can't ask him, "Oh, I'm struggling with this bit. Can you help me?" Yeah, I know.
It's never going to come back to you and say, "Look, Dane, see your hand there. It's going too far back."
Yeah.
And that might be the issue in a particular thing you're playing.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like with jazz drumming. And as an example, I went once to Steve's, and I was learning this Buddy Rich song, and I showed him. I had about 80% of the song sorted, but I wasn't 100%. But I showed him what I had, and we were discussing it after, and I said, look, the thing is I don't know how hard or how lightly should I be playing the bass drum, and he says, so he said, well, play the part. So I started playing the part, and he was going, quieter. And then in the end, I it's what's called feathering.
Yeah, I've heard that term.
And I realized it was like so much quieter than what I was doing. Now, you're never going to get that from YouTube, because I could watch that on YouTube, but, nobody's going to come back and say, Spike, that's great, but the bass drum's way too loud.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
playing all the parts correctly,
yeah,
but, the level of the bass drum is way, sorry, I just got something on my screen here.
Yeah, the dynamics,
the bass drum is just too loud. So that's what, being in a room with someone can offer. That the YouTube thing never can. It's like the amount of times that I'm with somebody in here and I'm saying, look, you're playing all those notes correctly on paper, but it sounds wrong.
Yeah.
And what it is, it could be just the way that they've got the limbs. The hi-hats are too loud, the snare's too quiet.
Yeah.
Would be an obvious one. Again, you're only going to get this when you're with somebody, that you trust, to help you,
Yeah. I mean, I always say, maybe I give it a go, or it's like I did buy some books, but like, I don't know. I got a music A level, and I did a uni course on.
That's something I'll never have.
Yeah, well, there you go. But like, I can. I'm not saying I can read music, because I'm not a sight reader in any way on any instrument.
No.
But I've got the qualifications enough, and I've learned enough theory of music to kind of understand it all. But I've never been quick enough to kind of work it out. I don't have the patience.
Sight reading is another talent again, and not one I possess, and I suppose a lot of people that, can read okay would say, but, there's obviously holes in my knowledge as well. But again, you were sort of, when you mentioned earlier, there are points where somebody asks you a question where you don't know it, you have to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I had somebody come for lessons with me, and they wanted to be working on, quite highly developed Latin drumming. And I was like, look, I'm not your man for this.
Yeah,
You know, I do know a bit with Latin, and he'd see me playing some sort of, sort of jazz, Latin-y jazz, and that's why he got in touch with me. But, when he came to me, he was like, I could have helped him with his playing, but he wanted to be playing in that specific area.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, there'll be somebody out there that's better suited for that.
Yeah.
You want help with your general drumming because, I could have been saying, again, pointing out, look, your foot technique here or the hand technique there. But, there was, no point me thinking that I could help him develop his Latin drumming because he was doing pretty well with that already,
Yeah.
So that's, sometimes you've got to be kind of open to that, don't you? It's like, it's like an older, when you see these older, older, more developed jazz drummers, well, if you're a young lad like you, or I, when we were young, that's not the most suitable teacher for us,
Yeah. I know. Yeah, exactly.
So, but for some it is. For some, they're just like, some people are like, they can work with that, but for others it puts them off. You sometimes have to have somebody like-minded. I mean, I don't like it when sort of maybe somebody might come to me saying like, I love punk drumming, just show me punk drumming. I'm like, well, I'm not interested in showing you punk drumming. I'm going to show you, good quality, everything that's needed to be as good a quality drummer as you can be.
Yeah.
We'll adapt it to punk drumming.
Yeah.
But, I'm going to show you some jazz, because I think that I'm not going to sort of do it where somebody that new comes to me that wants to learn punk, I'm going to go, no, I'm not doing punk, I'm going to do jazz. But I'm going to sort of say, this is what it's made up of, so,
yeah.
You want to have that good bounce, well, we're going to have to do a bit of jazz, because that's what's going to create the momentum for your playing.
Yeah.
Or, let's listen to, or let's learn to play, let's learn to have some ability with rudiments, it's going to be handy for your drum rolls, and, whatever, it's utilizing all aspects of drumming, but bringing it into the playing or the musical style that you want, because, we all know that the greatest players, that's what they do.
Yeah, exactly. No, man, that's great. That's great. Thanks for that. I wanted to ask you about the D beat next, because I never even heard of a D beat until you mentioned it to me at Bloodstock, because apparently I was practically playing them, or I made close to what they are, but I'd never even heard of the term before. So I thought I was really interested in this, so I'm sure the listeners would be as well. So can you explain what it is a little bit and the kind of the roots, or maybe some examples of? I know.
Well, the D beat is like a very specific little pattern. It's very simple and raw. And again, I've done a little series on D beat on my YouTube channel that people can find. It's just, I might as well say it now. It's about it's youtube.com and my name, Spike T. Smith.
Yeah.
But I've done some instructional stuff on it and some more developed stuff. But the D beat is a pattern that primarily came to the fore with a band called Discharge. And it's a very simple little pattern. It's, the fundamental of the pattern between the bass drum and the snare drum is kind of that initially is even played with the right hand following the bass drum, because the way it's come about is, and again, like I go through this in one of my documentaries, was two drummers. You've got Tej Roberts from Discharge,
right.
And the reason it's called D beat, by the way, is I suppose it's simply Discharge beat.
Okay, right, okay.
And what it is they released 3 EPs, like in quite a short space of time, in 1980 going into 1981, and out of about the 12 songs on those 3 EPs, Dane, that rhythm is in about 9 of them.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And so it became kind of like a very important part of the sound. And for those who don't know, Discharge really, created a new sound within punk. They took it from punk to hardcore punk.
Yeah, because that's I'm fairly aware of the differences, but how would you describe what if a band's a punk band and a band's a hardcore punk band? What makes what makes him into a hardcore punk band musically?
Well, I'll answer that, but just to go back one step, the drummer from the Buzzcocks also played the very same beat. So when I was starting to do the documentary on the DB, I knew, with my knowledge of it, if I just, focused it on Discharge, people would be, oh, they were the first to do it. The Buzzcocks, released it, did it, on this song 2 years before or whatever. And I thought to myself, well, I know this.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to interview John Marr from Buzzcocks and find out about it with him, But as I point out in the documentary, Buzzcocks, it wasn't a staple part of their sound. Out of the 3 albums and numerous singles they did in their early incarnation, it probably only appears in 2 songs.
Right.
Whereas with Discharge, as I said, out of the 12 songs that make up their first 3, records, it's in about 9 of them. So they had based the sound on it,
Yeah, totally.
Now, to answer, if I can, and I mean, I'm not necessarily the most qualified to do this, but my thoughts would be what defines, like it turning into hardcore punk from punk would be basically the aggressiveness, the intensity, the rawness, the tempo.
Right.
Almost kind of, I don't want to say less tuneful, but the singing's more shouty.
Yeah.
And you're probably more reliant on the guitar riff to be the melody.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, when you hear a song, like even what you hear with me with Memoriam, and like as an example, this is a different thing, but with death metal, like you said, it's quite bouncy. I was thinking it's going to be more like this. Well, Carl, the singer, has obviously got the death metal vocal style, but the tune is in the riff.
Yeah, that makes sense now.
Spotlight's catchy riffs,
Yeah.
And when I first heard Discharge, and bands like that, and when they were starting to, to come about, and that hardcore thing, it's faster, it's more aggressive, it's probably, recorded more cheaply. This is where DIY was starting to really come in.
Yeah.
The singers are much more shouty, so the guitar riff is much more important to carry the tune.
Okay. Is there any
that would be an answer to try and be as succinct as I could without going meandering.
No, I appreciate that. That's good, because it's always something. I've been surrounded by like friends that have been into like the hardcore punk, and they've had bands and stuff, and I've always like. It makes sense now when you say about that, but like I've always known. But what's the difference between punk and hardcore punk?
Yeah, going back to the DB thing, just to sort of with regards to you, of course you played it, for years in songs, because really what one of the purveyors before punk, you could say, were Motorhead using it.
Yeah.
A lot. That's all, but you can hear it in Velvet Underground songs and all sorts. That the thing that makes it the DB is the tribalness of it, because the drummers, and something I didn't point out in my documentary, is that both the drummers had only been playing weeks.
Right, so it was when I see. That.
So there's no independence there, But the interesting thing is both bands, the Buzzcocks and Discharge, it'd been used as a drum introduction.
Right.
So there's something about those bands thinking, wow, let's start the song with that.
Yeah.
And the reason why I started really, doing my documentaries and stuff like that on this was because I felt like, unless you're really into that music, people don't know it. But I think that's a little bit ridiculous now. It's like, it's not just a beat, it's a musical, it's a style of music, within punk. And I mean, when I was younger, moving aside from musical styles and interests, when you're a musician, isn't it supposed to be that, it's good to have knowledge of all sorts of things? And, like when I was younger, I learned how to play a foxtrot off my dad's drum machine. I wasn't interested in foxtrot or, or a waltz or playing them in a traditional sense, but I thought it was, good armory for me to have it in my, in my toolbox as a drummer,
Yeah.
And so with the DB, I sometimes feel that sort of punk drumming and, and the subgenres that are related to it, they don't get like, they don't get the kind of kudos and attention that they rightfully deserve now. It's like, it's no good sort of, like in an educational sense, thinking that punk is still some sort of subculture music. It's the biggest form of music in the world. Green Day are one of the biggest bands in the world.
Yeah.
They're a punk band, regardless of what you think of them or, or how punk you think they are or how pop punk or whatever. They are massive.
Exactly.
They're right there with U2 and Metallica. It's like, it's not a subgenre or a subculture of music. It's like, it's massive. And so my reason with the DB that I thought just for myself was, I know about it. And I thought, well, I want to just put it out there a little bit more. I think it deserves more attention in the drumming, in the general drumming fraternity and in the educational sense of it, especially.
Definitely. And like you said, for people who have not been brought up listening to punk and hardcore punk and stuff, and it'd be useful for them to learn it, to add it to their kind of arsenal and just to get the vibe of it. I'm sure it'll come in handy. Like you said, if I learned the reggae beat, it'd be handy for me at some point.
That's right. It's exactly that. I mean, sooner or later, it's going to be one of those things that a drummer that, there's still a lot of attention put on, like forms of drumming that are respectable because they're impressive, like gospel chops drumming.
Yeah.
But, in the real world of drumming, that's not got a lot of use,
Yeah.
Because, those gospel chops drummers don't play those gospel chops when they're on a proper gig,
Some of them do, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Some of them do, very few. But I mean, when you see sort of like, somebody playing all, over, I don't know, like doing a kind of, like a sort of gospel chops drum cover over sort of, Rihanna's song or something.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're not going to play like that with Rihanna.
No, she's not going to have that.
You're doing that to a song on your own self-indulgent vid.
Yeah.
But if you're a working drummer, you're going to sort of like, and you're being quite versatile. Like you said, somebody might go, listen, I'm doing this kind of reggae style song. Can you play me a one drop? Do you know what I mean? And you're going to be expected.
I'd rather be able to do it than not.
You feel that you know it.
Yeah.
Even if you're not playing in the reggae band, maybe that's the kind of thing, that started with the Police. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
The kind of thing that started that going. But I think that's sort of like a DB, like, now it's like you hear these kind of pseudo punk style things on TV, on adverts, on, incidental music. And so to me, it's going to be inevitable that songwriters and the people who are doing stuff like this are going to, it should be a case of like, listen, I've got this punky song, and you're able to say, oh, I know a punky rhythm, it's called a DB, or maybe the guitarist will come up to you and sort of say, listen, I've written this song, I'm after a DB, and so really it should just be there the same way as when somebody says to you, like a blast beat, you know what it is if you're into that, or a samba if you're coming from a Latin vibe, a samba is not the same as obviously a foxtrot, but they're coming from the Latin, the Latin side of things, so
it's useful.
That was my thoughts with the DB. It was just like, well, let's put something out there, and it's as I said, it's a respected form of music, and what I like about it, to summarize it, is that fair play to those young lads as they were then playing that music. 40 years on, they've done something that they got a rhythm that's recognized after them. I mean, how many drummers get that?
No, exactly.
Any,
And like you said, like if you said they were very inexperienced at the time, but they came up with something. Their inexperience turned into something like revolutionary
Exactly.
which was, and that's what's cool about music and cool about drumming, is there's no rules and anyone can create anything, and that can become a thing. It can become a new thing, and that can inspire people for years. What like you mentioned about punk, it's coming back around again. I know Green Day are obviously been going for years and years, but it's the youngsters are getting back into this pop punk kind of genre again. And like Travis Barker is playing on all these young new pop albums, basically, but they're very kind of rock influence. And I imagine that's just going to create a lot more interest in the older stuff as well, when people kind of get into it that way. Like, a lot of kids get into music with mainstream pop, and then they go, oh, I like that. And then they'll probably get into the kind of more guitar based, maybe more authentic kind of punk, and go back from there, and then they'll discover Discharge at some point. And then
the next thing they're listening to, like, Dave Grohl said, white noise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
More and more extreme.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah, but that's great. And you sent me a video. There's a video of you actually played with Discharge the other day at a gig, at one song. So yeah, that was like, I imagine that was really cool for you. So congratulations, that would have been fun. And you played the D beat. You played a D beat song.
I played, I always wanted to do it, and then so I asked, because I do know the guys, but not so well. I'd take that for granted, but I thought, I'll ask, and then I thought, well, I should play the very first song I heard by him, which isn't strictly, it is a D beat, but it's a D beat with a kind of,
a variation,
partly D beat and part of straight rhythm. But I thought, well, I got to play the song that I first heard, and and it's all part of D beat. But D beat, as I said, is it's as a rhythm, it probably dates back to tribes in Africa or whatever, because probably. It's really kind of got that tribally feel, and that's great. But I think that's the great aspect of it. It's attainable by anybody.
Yeah.
And what I try to do in my other videos is that, I've tried to show where you can take it. That's what I'm trying to do with it. I'm trying to say, okay, this is a D beat. We know it's fundamental and basic and raw. But what about if you try and do this with it? What about if you try and play it as a linear pattern? Now we're getting into a gospel chops area.
Yeah, I watched that video this morning, actually, the linear D beat. I was like, oh, this. So yes, you've got your YouTube channel, just for anyone listening. You've got your documentaries. There's obviously lots of live performance videos from gigs. We've also got some really, really, really useful teaching videos on there as well. So it's a kind of a nice hub for everything, which is kind of what I'm trying to do in mine, but without the teaching.
We're all trying to do the same thing, aren't we? It's
trying to build something.
Well, I mean, I think we're all trying to do the same. We're just trying to make sure we're covered in all areas.
Yeah.
And, everything that we've gone through over the past 18 months has got everybody probably rethinking, really, unless you were able to, comfortable enough to sort of just ride it through,
Yeah, some people probably have been.
Then you have to think smart. And I mean, there's a lot of people that I thought might have been able to ride it through that, haven't, so. I've been glad of all these avenues, and I'm sure so have you, and whatever they are,
I didn't get to play as much.
I'm trying to develop it all as well. It's, because I'm not trying, neither are you, and I guess maybe a lot of people who watch this, I'm not an Instagram drummer, I'm a working, player that, that's my history of it. And although I want to take on these, these new mediums, they'll never be my greatest strength. And, I actually like doing the videos for YouTube and that. And I like doing kind of, the drum cam ones and that, because, I just try and do it as well as I can. But,
I like
my talents aren't, computers and editing.
No. I was going to say, do you edit them yourself?
I do,
Cool. And I said DIY.
Well, it's back to that DIY thing again. It's just kind of how it is. I mean, I was thinking about it recently, is that coming from that background, there's, in some ways, you know, it has kept me and others I've seen like that in good stead because, you know, the industry as it was has changed so much that, you know, for me, the DIY is second nature, but I've seen a lot of people having to adapt to it
Yeah.
quickly, you know.
Yeah.
And that started with the whole collapse of the record labels, where
Yeah.
suddenly, you know, bands, you know, they didn't have those kind of huge advances. They're not getting money in from you know, from royalty. So suddenly merch is the new thing. You know, well, I'm not, you know, been doing that for years. It was a necessity.
You had to, yeah. It's the same with all the bands I've been. It's kind of like, well, that's the merch sometimes means whether you actually break even or not on a tour or whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then you know, and so everything to do with that. You know, how much money you spend in the studio. You know, how lavish you are with your travel, and you know, all of these things. I mean, you know, like say when I, you know, worked with, you know, Killing Joke, for instance. I mean, you know,
we haven't talked about them yet.
Oh, well, you know, they kind of work very old school. You know, it's like everybody has a tech, and you know, they want to be traveling, you know, like, you know, as comfortably as possible, and I don't blame them for that.
Yeah.
But you know, they operate as if there's a lot more money.
Right.
You know, or you know, maybe now that, you know, they're kind of more, you know, mindful of it. But I felt while I was round and that I mean, I liked it.
Yeah,
it made things a lot easier for, you know, for us the musicians. You know?
Yeah.
But I was looking at it and thinking, you know, kind of it's, you know, it's not really so much how bands would do it now. Bands would be more mindful about how many people they had working, and
totally,
what they really need, and you know, are you of that level that you just turn up and for sound check, and you know, even though you're about to help in the day, you know,
it's crazy.
And of course, some are, you know, and some, you know, have to do that because maybe they're doing press and things like that in the day, but you know, a lot of people have become have had to become a lot more savvy to it, I suppose, you know.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you understand. But so we'll check out your YouTube channel. But I think I mentioned
subscribers.
Yes, subscribers. Same for my channel as well. Subscribe to both of our channels, please. It'd be very nice.
Please.
Yeah, please do it. And check out. I forgot to mention the title of the Memoriam album is To the End. So if anyone's interested in checking that out, because it is really good from what I've heard so far. Obviously keep up to date with it. There might be live gigs coming up. Are there any live gigs coming up? Or
well, I mean, predominantly Memoriam, you know, out of mainland Europe.
Yeah.
You know, that's where the band's popularity mainly lies. I mean, that album went in the top 10 in Germany.
Did it? Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, so that was cool. And it did quite well in other regions, but, you know, like in the UK, it probably barely scraped in the top 50 or whatever. But nonetheless, I still feel that's an achievement, you know. But I think their last one went into the top 10.
Wow.
But you know, anyway, predominantly the band's main, you know, gigging diet is mainland Europe and a lot of festivals and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, you know, and they do play things like Bloodstock and that, of course. And, you know, I think there's one called Manifest that, you know, basically this year it's been like lots of gigs that have just been getting postponed or cancelled.
Yeah.
So the next one, I think, is the Damnation Festival, which I believe is a death metal festival in Leeds, and that's in November. So
okay, cool.
So we did have gigs, you know, like in between. We're supposed to be in Holland and Germany this month, September. That's been pulled, you know. I haven't even bothered to refer to the other gigs now. I know they're not happening.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because we've got.
you know, and you know, like. Next year, I suppose, is, you know, what we hope for a more typical and steady year of playing. I'm sure you're the same. Yeah,
well, I'm still hopeful for the ones we've got for the rest of the year.
You've got a UK tour and that.
Yeah, we've got a UK tour. We do have a few gigs in Europe as well, in mainland Europe. There's one in France, one in Germany. Don't know what the situation with that is at the moment. Belgium as well, maybe. We'll see. I think the French one is definitely happening at this stage
so Memoriam don't even really tour in that sense. They're more the way they like to do it is to go out for weekends and play like small batches of gigs. Normally around a festival or something.
Well, that probably suits you quite well as well with your teaching as well. So you're not taking too much time off that.
It works for me. I mean, I'd be happy to tour, but that's what I've done a lot of in the past, and I was tiring of it to some extent.
Oh yeah, it's hard. It's hard work. It's tiring work.
It is. Well, yeah. Again, it's levels, isn't it? If you, I mean, I don't need to have all the trappings of sort of the more successful playing. But it is nice if you've got a tech or even just a backline tech that will look after the equipment after you play.
Yeah, that's nice. It is nice.
Or you've got somebody sat with you while you're playing. Like when I'm doing that Memoriam stuff, for instance, you don't have a sound check. You need somebody that can run back and forth to change the monitor mixes because you haven't set it up. You've not had a sound check, and somebody to help you if something breaks or anything like that. When you're having to do it all, by yourself and on tour, it can become.
I agree.
It can really start to make it feel unenjoyable.
Yeah, because I know what you mean. But luckily sometimes we get to have people, don't we? Sometimes I'm at that stage. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Depends on the budget.
It's. I mean, when I did, say the Steve Ignorant tour, we were playing decent sized venues, and I was able to set up the gear. I didn't have a tech then, and we were playing Shepherd's Bush Empire, But the thing was, you were set up. You had plenty of time to sound check. You have your own kind of organizational thing, don't you? Your spare snare here, your pedal there. You kind of got it covered for every eventuality.
Yeah.
But if you're sort of doing it where you're having to swap over the gear frantically,
I don't like that.
Like at the Camden Underworld or something like that, then that brings about its own stresses, and maybe you forget to put the snare where you normally have it because there's so much gear around, and and that's when it gets messy, and that's when I think, that's when a tech or somebody is really helpful. It's really useful. It's not about being decadent and
it's just practical, really. It's
like, I'm just at a level where I want it, because I think we all know, even when you've got it all, you want to check it. It's like.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just a practical thing to do sometimes. So, we're coming towards the end now. So we're at that stage where I got a couple of questions from some of my patrons on my Patreon. So if anyone wants to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/drum for the song, little plug, and you can support the podcast. One of the benefits of one of the tiers is that you get to ask my guests a question. So I got one. This one isn't really a question. It's more of a statement from Dean Monahan. He's over in America. Thank him for me. The damned fucking kick it. That's what he said. So he's just pretty impressed that you were in the damned. So this one is from Paul Hutchins. Spike stepped in for Killing Joke in 2010, which included their first dates in China. Could he tell us a bit about that? Because not only are Killing Joke an exceptional band, but the whole thing sounds amazing.
Yeah, I can. The way it came about was, as I remember it, is Killing Joke are back to the original lineup now. So the person who's come in with that question probably knows that, but maybe a lot of people don't. But basically, after many years in numerous lineup changes, it's back to the original four.
Okay.
So I have to point that out because I was stepping in for the original drummer, playing with the original guys, which was, another career highlight.
Yeah, exactly. Never ending.
And, it came about to a drummer that had been playing with him that I was friends with, Benny Calvert. He played with him for a number of years in the 2000s, I think. He played with them after I joined them after They had Dave Grohl drumming on an album.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Yeah, he did the album. It's Killing Joke. They've done 2 albums just called Killing Joke, but there's one, Killing Joke 2003. I highly recommend you check it out.
Oh, well, yeah, I will.
Dave's killing it on it. It's brilliant.
Cool.
Anyway, the drummer they had after that, they had a drummer from Prong promoting that album that Dave played on, but then afterwards they had Benny Calvert, who's a friend of mine, and I'd seen him not long before. And of course, he wasn't in them. They were back to the original lineup. But Big Paul Ferguson, who is the original drummer, at that time he had commitments with his own work, with whatever he was doing. He lives in New York, or he lives somewhere on the East Coast in the States. And there were bits that he couldn't do. Anyway, this China gig he couldn't do. So they'd asked Benny, and he couldn't do it. But a bit like me with the Damned, actually, It was like sort of saying, well, look, I know somebody that can definitely do it. I wholeheartedly, say, this person can do it. So don't worry about, well, you can audition, but, they'll be able to cover it. And so basically, and it wasn't very much time. It was like just over a week or something before. Wow. I got a call saying, look, can you do this gig with Killing Joke? We've got this big festival in China. They need a drummer. Can you do it? I was like, yeah, can I? And they were like, the only problem is the paperwork, because it's so short. Anyway, the Chinese officials were determined that the band were going to get in when they play,
Yeah,
so
right.
we were assured of that. I did do the paperwork. How we got through, I don't know. Anyway, I frantically learned the set, and it was basically a trip over, in China for a week. We had obviously the traveling over, and then we had a couple of days of rehearsals, and then we had to drive, to play this festival that was, should have been a couple of hours away from Beijing, but ended up being about a 10 to 15-hour journey, depending on whose story you hear.
Oh, right.
I remember it being long.
Jesus, that's long.
And so it was just one of those mad experiences. I mean, all the gear and everything had been sorted, so I was using, the equipment that was all allocated for Big Paul.
Cool.
So I wasn't using my normal spec of gear, but it was very similar. The gear itself, it just wasn't, it wasn't Pearl, it wasn't Zildjian, but, it was, the similar drums or sizes and, obviously the choice of cymbals. Very interesting doing that, actually, playing with a band on the equipment that's been allocated for their drummer. Because,
I bet, actually.
He uses 13-inch hi-hats. That's interesting. Things like that. But yeah, to do it was mind-blowing. And also, they were pretty much, because they hadn't been that long together as the original lineup. It really was like a greatest hits set, which, let's face it, if you're going to play with sort of, any band that you love, you want to be playing all the key songs, don't you?
Of course. And you're more likely to know them better, I guess, as well, if you're more familiar.
Kind of, you do, yeah, you're right. I mean, when I was with the Damned, I kind of had that familiarity, and that was there with Killing Joke as well, where, say, with Morrissey of New York Dolls, it wasn't, like, I really had to learn the songs from scratch. But so it was an amazing experience, and again, as the person who came in with the question knows, they're quite a bunch of crazy, very, headstrong individual characters. It was like,
right.
So you're working with kind of, some mad geniuses,
Yeah. Have you, before the odd story, it just reminded me, I've actually, well, I don't know if you know, but my band with my dad, we supported Guns N' Roses a few years ago. We did 4 shows with them, and Killing Joke were on one of the bills, but they went on after us. I can't remember where it was. Germany, maybe.
Yeah, here's a funny thing. After I played, the other week, after we played the gig in Bloodstock, the week after I was playing in the Underworld with Onslaught, I think we were talking about it. And I said hello to, is it Jeff?
Jeff is my friend, the bass player.
I said hello to him.
Cool.
You.
Cool, thank you.
I was driving home, and didn't feel I enjoyed that gig, you know, and I was a bit kind of, oh, you know, that didn't go so well. And I thought I'll stop off in this little, you know, like late night fast food takeaway place I know in Highgate. So I stopped and walked in there, and there was there Roy, the keyboard player.
All right, okay.
Killing Joke.
That's so random.
Yeah.
What?
And he did that Guns N' Roses gig because I remember seeing his posts about it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it was cool. I didn't get to speak to him or anything, but I just it's weird when you get to kind of those kind of size gigs. Everything's so separate and like strict, and it was weird.
Right.
It was right. You know, it was an amazing experience. I don't, you know, who knows if it'll ever happen again, but yeah.
Well, you've done it, haven't you?
Yeah, we've done it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, so the thing is, you know, with these things, it's like me with that Killing Joke one. You know, whether it happens again or not, the fact that you've done it at all is amazing. I mean, I've been included in a book. You know, I told the story of my inclusion of that. You know, that's got into a Killing Joke book. And,
wow, that's cool.
And when I go and see the guys, and as I often say, you know, when I see them, I say, you know, I'm just so pleased that, you know, that the gig that we did was an experience for us all, because they'd never played in China, you know.
No.
You know, in their 40 plus year history, you know, I did something that was historical with them. I mean, I could have easily and just as much enjoyed, would have just as been happy playing with them in Rock City, but, you know, they've done that tons of times. That wouldn't be sort of something that stands out so much, you know. So that's what makes it magical. Again, with career highlights, isn't it? I mean, you know, like that one, I'm sure, you know, might not even be your favorite gig, but it's sure, you know, it's got to be kind of one of those highlight moments for you. Yeah,
we did four gigs in total. So just generally, we did four of them. Yeah. So the fact, that kind of, that period, it was like a month, and we had a few festivals in between the gigs because they were spread out, and it was just, living on a bus for 3 weeks in the summer in Europe, you know, we getting paid. We had a few mates like we were teching for us and stuff. So we just had a great time, and you know, we enjoyed the experience as much as possible.
They're the kind of gigs where your mates want to tech.
Yeah, they'll tech. Yeah, they want to tech. Yeah, but we didn't mind because it was like, it's just, you know, they know what they're doing. You know, we have more fun then. You know, because they just are mates.
Like a good team.
Yeah, it was great. But we got I guess we've kind of covered this, but just in case there's anything else that you've got to say. As a non-musician, this is from Paul Hutchins, the same guy. As a non-musician, I'm always surprised by a musician like Spike who can turn his hands and feet to such a wide range of music. I'd like to know, what are the similarities, differences, and biggest challenges when playing for such diverse acts? For example, with Morrissey, and today with Memoriam. So I know we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but
what are the biggest? Answer it from a point of view of sort of somebody that's not the player, I suppose.
Yeah.
I guess it's, you know, more than anything, it's dynamics.
Yeah.
You know, within what you're playing. So, you know, for Paul, you know, like when you're playing with Memoriam, you know, your feet are, you know, are really laying down a very, very heavy foundation. You know, I'm using heavier sticks because I want more weight behind the hits to create the sound.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, when you're playing with Morrissey, you know, the drumming is you know, it's a lot lighter. You don't want to be physically hitting too hard. Although actually, I was hitting pretty hard when I was playing for him, which is probably why I ended up with a perspex screen in front of me.
Right. But, I've never had one of those.
No, they're horrible. You can see your reflection in them.
No one wants to see that.
You know, it's a, you know, necessary evil. I did offer to play lighter, and he didn't want that because he knew that it was changing the sound dynamically, you know.
He probably just wanted more quieter on stage for him. He obviously wanted.
It's quieter on stage for him, so that's how it works. And you know, when you're playing with him, it's all about him. You know,
of course.
You know, he's a solo artist. So it's really the sort of like the dynamics. You know, the parts are different. The style is. It's not as dramatically different as you think, because you'd still file that as, you know, as rock drumming. You know, they're just very extreme different ends of rock drumming, but it's not like the difference between Memoriam and playing with HR.
Yeah, that's
Where I'm going from like the death metal drumming to dub reggae drumming. So that I hope I answered this question in a fairly simple but straightforward manner.
No, that's great. That's good. And no, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Almost at the end now, so now it's time for the quick fire round, which you're probably familiar with if you've listened to a few episodes. So
not all of it.
Not all of it. No. So right, what do you prefer, hot or cold weather?
Oh, hot.
Daytime or nighttime?
Do you know, for a long time I would have said nighttime for many years, but over the past year, more recent, daytime.
Yeah, good. The sun is good for you. Vitamin D from the sun.
I think it's an age thing.
Maybe. I don't know. But
you might still be in the nighttime period, though.
I'm asleep at night. I go to bed at 10 p.m. Pretty lame.
It's better to enjoy the day. It's more beneficial.
Yeah,
I find out.
Yeah, it's good, man. Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Me too. Guitar or bass?
Both are critical, but when I tell you my history has got to lean towards guitar, from my upbringing.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
What about you?
I prefer bass, actually. Well, I'm coming from the point of view I can play a bass guitar better than I can play an electric guitar or acoustic guitar. I know I've got them behind me on the wall, but
I did learn. I do play a bit of basic guitar and bass, so I did end up fulfilling to a small extent my guitar dream, but not to a point of a very able player, but enough to be able to write tunes if I want to, or to convey ideas.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a really useful thing to have as a drummer. So I think that's cool.
But I love guitar and bass. I guess we all do, don't we? We all have our favorite bass players and favorite guitarists. But let's say guitar.
Cool, no problem. Nylon or wood tip sticks?
Well, these are all your answers. I feel hard to give you, succinct. But I'll have to go for wood. Actually, look, I've got some Memoriam for the first time ever. Got some Memoriam sticks.
Oh, nice.
Got the wood tip.
What brand are they?
They're the London Drum Company.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
they're good sticks.
I've heard some good things about those. So,
I suggest you look into them. They're I tried some for a while, and then I've been using the ones I've had for these gigs, and they're lasting out really well.
That's good. It's good to hear. And nice to know there's
wood tips.
Yeah, wood tips. Yeah, I don't think anyone said nylon. Actually, I think everyone has said wood.
I do like nylon. I do like them. I said, but the reason everybody says wood is more that nylon tips just are unreliable. They fall off.
Yeah, and I don't like how they mark the symbols sometimes.
That's another thing. Yeah, it's the mark and the symbol. But I do like the clarity that they give to a Wright symbol.
Yeah, I bet it is useful, but for the style I play, it wouldn't really work because I just crash my Wright symbol anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, for certain, for jazzy things and stuff like that. Mind you don't always want a ridiculous amount of clarity with jazz. So I suppose the wood just is a little bit warmer, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. This is always a tricky one. John Bonham or Neil Peart?
Oh, I have to just immediately say Neil Peart.
Okay, I thought you were going to say that based on what we've talked about because you haven't mentioned Bonham once. But a lot of people find that tricky. But
it is because
they're very different.
The only reason I'm a big fan of John Bonham and I'm a big fan of Led Zeppelin. But if I really, honestly trace the influence in my own playing, Neil Peart has had, significantly more. And I mean, I do have John Bonham sort of moments. There's John Bonham moments on the Memoriam album, but there's a lot more Neil Peart. And when I think about it through the years and the kind of player I am and the fact that, I could have gone to Memoriam and sort of thought, right, I'm going to go with a 4-piece kit, it's my own gig. I'm doing my own parts. I can approach it how I like. But you heard me say earlier, I was adding concert songs. So, so.
Yeah, why not? Nah, cool. That's cool. That's wicked. Again, tricky. Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Definitely the Beatles.
Yeah, that's how I would rock, to be honest. Clear go on.
I was just about to say, I've done my best with the Rolling Stones. You heard me mention even at the beginning that there was Beatles and Stones albums in my dad's collection, and they just don't do it for me, Yeah. I mean, I appreciate where they're at. And,
obviously sad
and
news.
Everything, and God rest his soul with Charlie Watts.
Yeah.
But
because I imagine
the Beatles just one that I really enjoy their albums, and historically have, and and everything that goes with them. Where the Stones, it's like I like the tracks I hear, but when I've tried to listen to their albums, for me personally, they just don't do it for me.
Yeah,
I don't know why that is, because they're so liked,
Yeah, well, obviously they're very popular, so fair enough. No, I haven't really given any full albums a chance, to be fair, whereas I've listened to all the Beatles albums and I know I love them. The first time I heard some I wish I remembered the first one I listened to in full, and I was like, wow, I think it might have been Rubber Soul or something like that, and I was like, this is so cool. And
the first one I heard was that kind of greatest hits, the famous Red, and there's the blue. I think the Red is the early years, and the blue is the latter years. You might not have even seen them, but
maybe
they were pretty famous albums, and ways into the Beatles years ago.
That's fair enough. Yeah, cool. It's always a tough one.
And then I eventually went through listening to the albums chronologically, and
I think that's better. It's great to hear them and associate that track with, that's on this album and that's also on this.
Yeah.
And you can tell what kind of what mindset they were in, let's say, at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But cool. Next word: clear or coated drum heads?
Oh God, it's another sort of bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah.
Generally, I use clear.
Okay.
Except on the snare, where I would use coated. My preference is if I had to have either or, I guess would be clear.
Cool. Okay. Big or small venue?
Ooh, big.
Big. And favorite time signature to play?
Well, I've got to stick with the obvious that everybody says, isn't it? Which is 4/4. Yeah. I could say 2/4 just for the sort of more, upbeat punk rhythm, really. But let's go with 4/4.
Fair enough. No, that's cool. So obviously coming to the end now. If you could create your own dream band with yourself on drums, featuring any musicians, dead or alive, playing the other instruments, who would you choose?
Oof. That's a really hard one.
I know, sorry.
Have you ever had anybody that's given that answer easily, or is everybody really scratching their heads?
Sometimes it comes quite quickly. It was quite funny. Brian Tichy just immediately just mentioned, he just said the members of Led Zeppelin, but then he did try and come up with a more interesting combination.
I'd almost say that, my dream band would be for me to just play with Bad Brains, back in their heyday.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
But I'm going to come up with one because you're kind of giving me,
nice.
giving me things. So who would I think of? Well, let me think. Depends what sort of music you'd be thinking of playing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's up to you. It's your band. So.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'd probably. Well, where would I even go with the song? With a bass player, I don't know. There's so many great ones, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think if I was going to start with a singer, let's start with a singer, Bob Marley.
Oh, nice.
I'd want to be with a singer that not only, was sounding so beautiful, but actually had something to say.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah, so I'd start with sort of, like Bob Marley. God, who would I want on rhythm guitar? James Hetfield.
Nice. Well, you can't get much better rhythm guitar than him.
No. So yeah, if I was going for sort of James Hetfield, Paul Marley, me on drums. Would you need a bass player?
Someone's got to play bass. Come on.
You've got to have somebody that's a bass player that doesn't sort of hit that realm. So I don't know. Let me think. I don't want to just say who could I be thinking of as a bass player. Do you know Doug? I'd have to say maybe Doug Wimbish. Do you know Doug Wimbish?
I know who he is. Yeah.
From
Cool.
Living Colour and Tackhead, and he's a great session guy. He's a pretty out there bass player with his sounds and stuff.
That would be cool. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so it'd be me, Doug,
James
James Hetfield on rhythm guitar, Bob Marley.
You could have lead guitar.
Jerry Lee Lewis on piano.
Nice. That's going to be some band.
Yeah, and that we'd need, we'd need a lead guitarist, wouldn't we? So
Yeah.
Maybe Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, of course. Oh, that's a classic, amazing band. Oh,
Yeah,
potentially
and
would be.
it'd be nice to have a brass section, but
You can add, I don't know enough brass players, but obviously it might be your thing. But
I love a band called Morphine that were a trio from Boston, very lo-fi, and they were basically a bass player who just played with two strings on his bass. Really
nice.
lovely drummer they had a couple of drummers and a sax player. And he'd be cool in that band.
Yeah.
He played a lot of, is it baritone? The low sax, the heavy.
I know the
sort
one.
of sounding sax.
Yeah, I do like that sound actually. Baritone sax. Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
And actually, I would change Jerry Lee Lewis and have Little Richard.
Fair enough.
And then that way you've got the two singers.
Yeah.
As well as the pianist.
And you got James Hetfield. He can pitch in. He sings. He's been quite successful as a singer over the years.
Yeah, you got Bob, James, Little Richard, Doug, and me.
That's insane. That's brilliant. I love that answer. Thanks for that.
I wonder what it'd sound like.
I don't know, but it'd be rad. It's such a good variety of musicians in there. That's amazing.
I've never actually ever thought about that before. It's a good question. It's actually made me happy thinking about it.
Yeah, that's what I always think. It's just really interesting what people come up with. Sometimes you get very similar answers or predictable answers, but then sometimes they're really out there like that. That's pretty cool. So, and I guess
it's supposed to be. Yeah, I suppose it depends. The thing is I've gone out there because I suppose I've played with a lot of my dream people. So I mean, I would have said HR in his heyday because he was amazing. I mean, he's older and he's suffered problems. It's not the same, but that didn't lessen my experience with him at all.
Of course, yeah.
And Dave Vanian, from the Damned, Jazz from Killing Joke. These are all people that I've really looked up to, and I know a lot of people and. I've heard people mention it with yours, and you hear it a lot. They say Freddie Mercury, and it's kind of, and I get it,
Yeah.
Well, I've played with my version of Freddie Mercury, a singer who means that much to me. So, but I'll never get a chance to play with Bob Marley, obviously.
No. Yeah.
But I love Bob Marley, I really do. It's. Not just his singing, I love his voice. I love what he's done for music.
Absolutely, absolutely
icon. It's more than just the singer, and also Bob was a great performer. When you watch the footage, he's so immersed in it. He was, he's like a prophet.
Yeah. Well, I
to be honest, just a singer or a performer.
I'll have to check out some performances of him actually, because I've only heard the kind of records.
Any live stuff.
Yeah.
You see a man there who gives it. He just gets lost in it. It's not shapes to him.
No, it's just natural.
And that's the thing with some singers, obviously, especially in rock. I mean, I'm not knocking them, but they're pulling shapes. They go to a certain spot and do the same thing, and that's what it's meant to be. It's. But you watch something with Bob, but I think what I like is with the, some of the people that I mentioned is that they're unpredictable, and that's what I like.
Yeah, well, I think that's what makes the music exciting and the performance exciting, doesn't it? Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it does, and it was the same with HR from Bad Brains. I mean, he obviously took a lot from from Bob Marley and Michael Jackson as well. I mean, he was a great mover. He looks good. He did somersaults, on stage, but he'd do a somersault like at CBGB's, which is a very risque affair, but that's how spirited he was. It's
amazing. I'll have to check out all this stuff because I'm not that familiar with that kind of era as much. I don't know how. I know I've seen the T-shirts.
Either, is it? It's kind of like it's like me. I checking loads of blue note jazz. It's before my time, but the great thing about music, and I think we all agree, is that it's there. It's still there forever, and it's timeless in that sense, isn't it? It's I bought like some albums last week when I was in Bristol. Like an old Link Ray one. The guitarist, instrumental guitarist, one of the forerunners of the surf guitar. A bunch of songs I've never heard by him.
Wow.
And it was great. That music is like 60 years old, I guess, if you think about it. Yeah, over. So.
Yeah, it is, man. That's true, and I think that's why it's so important to so many people, and when will continue to be, hopefully, and I guess we've all put our own little stamps in the history of music for people in the future, and they might discover our music someday, and right. I like to think about that, like it's there, it's out there, it's there forever, and it's different now because of the digital age, but that makes it easier in theory for people to discover things and learn about new music. And so, yes, you've got to embrace it. I think I know the digitalization of music has kind of made it financially maybe more difficult for songwriters and bands and things, but I think you've got to try and utilize it as best as you can to maximize the positive side of it as well, rather than just moan about it. So I don't know why I'm talking about Spotify now, but we've gone off on a tangent.
Yeah,
but I think it's important. But cheers, Spike. I think cool. I think we'll wrap that up if that's cool. Unless you've got anything else you want to plug or talk about, or
well, I haven't got anything else to plug. If I could just encourage people to follow me, stay in touch with me. I like people staying in touch. I like people to look at my sort of videos or ask questions, or I teach, of course, so people, if they want they're interested in having lessons with me wherever they are these days. I mean, if they're somewhere that's within distance, they can come to me personally, or they can do it online, so how I'm always open and up for it. I'm never too busy for that. I always keep that going. So
keep it going. So if someone wanted to contact you about a lesson, what can they find you on Facebook? Well, they can just check out my
website. If they go to spikeTsmith.com, once you go on there, the avenues are all there,
Great.
But, it's not hard. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, you can DM on all these things now, can't you? So, I'm not difficult to contact.
Cool.
But stay in touch anyway. It's cool when people follow you, watch your vids, maybe make a comment.
Yeah, it really helps.
It's all about interaction, isn't it? That's what I like.
Yeah, and it's the same from my point of view, really. When especially with the YouTube thing, we're obviously both trying to push like YouTube channels and things. If even if you just press the like button, if you leave a comment, it does kind of really help. The more interaction that a post or a video gets, the more likely that YouTube will show that to someone else, because
that's right, and that's what you're trying to make happen, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's great when I get views, but like if no one's kind of like commenting or stuff, it's it's just limiting the reach really. So I know it's early days, but like, just even if there's a comment, oh, really enjoyed this or something like that, or
it helps. Yes, it helps. Yeah,
it just helps.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah. Well, things like that. It really helps, and it's not for our ego. It's literally we want more people to find our stuff. So, and that's how YouTube works. Unfortunately,
that's right. Yeah.
But, yeah. Cool. No, great. Well, thank you very much, Spike. I look forward to. Well, we'll keep in touch, I'm sure, from now on. And
definitely,
if I'm touring your way, obviously you're welcome to come to a show. And
I've already got my eye on the Norwich one. Are you playing in Leicester?
Not to my knowledge.
Nottingham?
Nottingham, we're doing, yeah.
Okay, so there then.
Rescue Rooms, I believe.
Oh, I know the Rescue Rooms. Yeah, that's not too far from me.
Okay, and I'll have a look at the dates. Whichever one's closest, let me know, and we can sort that out.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Well,
I've got one more thing for you, Dane.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned. Let's keep this fresh. My mother went to school with Lemmy.
Oh yes, that's that. Yes, sorry we didn't bring this up earlier. You told me that's so cool. And so in North Wales. I'm going to say it
also locally. My mum went to school with Lemmy.
Yeah, that's so cool. Did she? Well, did she ever talk about it, or did she know who Lemmy was?
Yeah, she remembered him.
Yeah,
she remembered him from before that. It was something that I knew that was well before the book and that came out.
Yeah,
and she used to talk about him getting expelled. And what she always says about it was, she goes, you can't believe how shocking it was for somebody to get expelled from school then,
Yeah. Oh my God, he was a bad boy.
The funny thing is that when he did the book, a few people told me, oh, you got to read Lemmy's book. He mentions coming from like your part of the world and all of that and stuff like that. And so of course I read the book and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Particularly like the bit about his mate with one leg or something, or a false leg getting chased to the campsite or something. That's in that area. But anyway, the thing is my mum was so curious, I got her the book,
Oh, cool. Nice.
And I was thinking, well, how's she going to take it? Because, obviously it's pretty rock and roll. But,
yeah.
The thing is that I've always found with Lemmy, he's very affable, isn't he? He has sort of traits in it that I think you and I can both see from being Welsh, even if he didn't see himself as Welsh. He certainly, that crucial part of his upbringing was in Wales, and he had, a lot of his humour and that I find like that. And anyway, so my mum read the book, and then so did my dad, and then my dad started going into, I know that shopping clan didn't know where he got that guitar from. I got one of my mics from there, and it became a funny little local thing, talking to my mum and dad about Lemmy, but not to do with Motorhead,
Yeah.
And I mentioned it to Lemmy once, just to finish this. I was playing in a venue in Hollywood, right by the Rainbow.
Okay.
Called the Key Club, and I'd gone for a little stroll, pre-gig to sort of, to stop myself from going to a pub. And as I was walking with a friend of mine, and he says, look who's in front of us, it's Lemmy, So I said, wow. Anyway, I thought, I'm not going to disturb him. And we walked across the road, and of course he walked to the Rainbow. I thought, I've got to go in and, have a drink. Yeah. So I went in, I went up to him, and I told him, I said, sorry for bothering you, blah, 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 but I've got to tell you, my mum went to school with you. And he says, did she? But what was her maiden name? And I thought it was great that he thought to ask her rather than to marry.
Yeah. He's clever, yeah.
And I said, Rona Parry. And he was, you could see him, he's thinking, I can't remember. He goes, that's really great, It's really great you came to tell me that. And I bet, he just thought, thankfully, not somebody coming wanting to buy him a whiskey and coke and...
Yeah, I think so many people, I think, because, he should be allowed to kind of hang out if he wants, wherever he wants, but like...
Of course he could, yeah.
But I bet a lot of people, approached a lot, I would imagine, yeah.
Well, so that's my little Lemmy thing that I
nice.
Quite,
that's a great story, and thanks for sharing this, and that's a great way to end. the podcast. And yeah, that's cool, because I know there's a lot of Motorhead fans that kind of listen to this show, that I'm sure any stories, involving Lemmy are always interesting. And yeah, fair play. And yeah, that's cool. So,
I was really glad I got to tell him it, and then I told my mum.
Yeah, and
so
then,
I made a little connection.
Yeah, so even if they couldn't speak to each other, at least you kind of connected them in that way. Nah, that's cool. Great, man. Thanks. So yeah, Spike, amazing. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in the future, and hopefully I get to share the stage.
Hey, listen, thanks for inviting me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'm absolutely, it's my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for listening and just being so supportive in general. So yeah, I'll check out more of your channel. I know you've got hundreds of videos on there. And yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Cheers, Spike. Thanks for everyone. Sorry. Thanks to everyone for listening. Cheers.
Drum for the Song podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Drum for the Song podcast. If you've enjoyed this, please consider liking the video and subscribing if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave me a review or comment, that would be fantastic too, as it helps other people discover this show. Please also consider sharing this with any family members or friends who might enjoy the content. You can also follow me on social media at Dane_drums or at Drum for the Song, or search for Drum for the Song on Facebook to follow the page and join the official Facebook group. If you'd like to support the podcast, you could purchase some merchandise from drumforthesong.com, or consider supporting me via Patreon from just £3 per month for additional exclusive content like bonus episodes, video calls with myself, competitions, discounts, and much more. Any additional support is always greatly appreciated, but I would like to give extra special thanks to my top tier Groove Master patrons, whose names are listed in the description below. My name is Dane Campbell, and thanks so much for watching or listening this far. If you're a drummer, don't forget to drum for the song.